Ladies and gentlemen, Diamond Podcasting Productions presents The Shoot, a pro wrestling podcast, with your hosts, Dan Burke and Drew McKenzie.
Hi, everybody. Diamond Podcast Productions presents The Shoot. We're back again. I am your host, Dan Burke, my co-host, Mac. How are you this evening?
Surviving and thriving, I guess. Or a little bit of both, something like that. How are you?
Well, I've heard people use the expression surf thriving. They just throw that in one big conjunction function, I guess you could say.
Conjunction
which
function.
I never thought I would say on this fucking program, let's be quite honest. I'm just going to use a School Days Rock little lyric there. Another big week in professional wrestling as we are in the midst of the road to WrestleMania. Of course, this is the big upcoming week of at the end of this week, going into Saturday, which this will be released tomorrow, bearing any technical issues that we've had in the past. But
why are you gonna jinx us? It's episode 4. You're starting off great, a little stammer in the beginning, and then boom! Fuck your couch.
I'm not blaming you, by the way, for the technical problems, anyways, because I'm usually the ones editing. And usually it's the software that's just like, it doesn't work for me, brother. All right. So
the one thing I'll say, I guess since we're already going there very early on in this episode, I thought we were going to wait like at least a half an hour, is that I will not be playing with things in my hands this episode, because holy shit, does that shit pick up on the audio.
I don't notice it until after, like, to the post-production, when I'm just like, what the hell's he doing? Like,
literally, all right, so hold on. So we might as well talk about it. So I got these fidget things, which is what you hear right now. And it's just like an accordion thing. I don't even know where the hell I got this thing, honestly. It's somewhere online. And it's cool. But now I'm just going to chuck it across the room, because I think the entire episode last week, literally it was picked up every single time. And I'm like, oh my God. So it's not audio issues, folks. It's just me being a putz. I need something in my hands to like wring something's neck, I guess. I guess I got a lot of aggression or something. I don't know.
Well, I guess we got to limit talk on certain topics like Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné, AEW.
No, Goldberg.
Goldberg. We got to limit him too. And one of our topics tonight, we're talking about like our Mount Rushmores, because this is President's Day week. So everybody had a good 3-day weekend, and I'm sure a lot of you parents out there, you're probably ready to kill yourselves because you got the kids all week. You're just like, whoa, wonderful. I have to deal with this. And they're screaming and yelling. And I'm sure the first thing you want to do on Saturday is get up at 4 a.m. for a pay-per-view or a PLE. Excuse me.
So hold on, just real quick. I might be getting up at 5, like, let alone the pre-show at 4. I'm not getting up at 5 for the actual show either. God bless if anybody.
No way.
If anybody in the United States is getting up early for this PLE, God bless. That's all I can say. Or hold on, I forgot. Or if you're on the West Coast, if you're going to do like this all-nighter, because it's like 2 a.m. on the West Coast, if you're going to do that and then watch it, like whatever your scenario is, if you are staying up or going to bed early to wake up early to watch this, just God bless, vaya con Dios.
If we were still in college and in our 20s, we would have stayed up for this. We either would have stayed up for this or we would have not gone to bed and just been like, we'll fall asleep after the show. Like,
Dan, at this point, I would consider us wrestling journalists, right? Like, just being objective for a moment. That's what I would say. We're episode 4. We're going to keep doing the show.
Yes.
And I'm still not getting up early for this.
Well, speaking of journalism.
Yes. Lay it out. Lay out that news. Absolutely.
I would like to thank, hold on for a quick second here. Just because it's been crazy. My phone's been blowing up since I got the news this afternoon on this. So forgive me where I can go in and look and try to be. I'd like to thank FeedSpot again for ranking the top 70 podcasts in pro wrestling that people should be listening to for 2024. Last year, they listed Pro Wrestling World and we were in the 40s. This year, we're at number 18 with some pretty big heavy hitters. Of course, ahead of us are Eric Bischoff and some of the bigger shows, and which I'm not saying that I should be into that upper echelon yet. I am not trying to put myself into that category yet, but to be at least in the top 20, and where last year we were in the 40s, it is a Barry Horowitz moment where I'm kind of patting myself a bit on the back a little bit. And, as Arn Anderson used to say, we don't mean to toot our own horn, but toot, toot. That's, every day, especially when we started this and this came up with this concept and this idea. My key word as far as being a content creator and a content provider for anybody that wants to get into this, you have to take every little small kind of acknowledgement as progress and as a small victory. Mind you, there is a lot more to go. But at least there's a lot of room for improvement on ends. I want to get better at this in general, either on this show and others. And it's important for me to be able to get that acknowledgement today of just like the hard work, especially that me and John have put in the last year and a half since we took over, where we started in the 40s and now all of a sudden we're in the 20s, not even in the 20s, we're in the teens. And it's kind of, it's one of those things. I sat there today and I was like, well, that was unexpected. Because you don't know. You don't know if people listen. You don't know if there are other people and other factors that are or you're providing content, but at the same time, it's always hard and difficult to realize if someone is actually listening or if someone is actually watching. And just to get a little something, it's not a play button by YouTube for 100,000. But the fact that I'm on Spotify, the fact that I'm on Apple, and we're growing, and people are listening, and we're getting acknowledged. It brings a definite kind of like, okay, I could sit back, pat myself on the back, but at the same time, I am more driven now than ever before. As far as I'm concerned, to not only make this a success, but to make my other projects also a success. Because nothing would bring me more joy than to just do this on a consistent basis, where I don't have to work a dumb 9 to 5 every day. And that's a dream that 99% of the public have. And don't get me wrong, I understand that it's a privilege to do this. But the way I always look at it is, even though it's considered by some small time and small, it's not like you're working for ESPN, even though ESPN, it wasn't what it was 20 years ago. Or you're not working for a radio station. Again, radio isn't what it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It wasn't what it was 5 years ago. The way that this is that it's about providing content and hoping and praying. And Mac has done a heck of a job this week pushing out. I pushing out people being like, please sub, like and subscribe. And I'm doing the same thing.
Subscribe.
Subscribe. Press that like button. Smash that like button. That is our. And I never thought I would be having to be that person of just like and subscribe. But it's just like we want to be able to continue doing this. We also want to be able to provide better content down the line, because right now it's just like our setup is not like, if you saw where I'm doing this from, people would just be like, how do you exist in this space? But I make it work. And as the monetization happens, that dream that everybody has, especially doing this, maybe it'll come, maybe it won't. But this is just at least an outlet that I can sit there and say. And I'd like to thank people who do listen to Pro Wrestling World, the people that came over here to hear from Pro Wrestling World on recommendations, because they like my work, they like Mac's work, they like John's work. I am extremely appreciative. And I'm not someone that tries to thank the general public, because I despise most of you. I'm kidding. Or am I?
I was going to say, you sure? Speaking of, just real fast as a good segue, like, we do want to have other guests on too.
Yes.
Like John. Mark will be on again at some point, I'm sure, and others that are out
Mark's
there in this space.
Fuck him.
Sorry, I tried.
I'm kidding, Mark. I'm fucking with you. Come on. I'm just saying that, like, yes, we're gonna have guests on. Occasionally, Steph might want to make an appearance or two, even though it's about wrestling. So I don't know if she's gonna want.
I mean, hey, we got the Halloween episode in a few months. Yeah, we got the Halloween episode in a few months. I'm sure there's like other holiday episodes that she can be a part of and stuff. And I mean, I look forward to that too, because that was always fun. But yeah, I will kind of echo the same sentiment. Congratulations to Pro Wrestling World Talk, to you, to John. Going from number 40 last year up to number 17 is a huge boost. And I could not be more proud of the both of you, and for the show, obviously, as well. So please hold for applause that you will not be able to hear until the show actually is released. But please hold for applause.
Yes, just get that one emoji of from Citizen Kane of just clapping.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's all I need for acknowledgement from people. No, and I thank you, Mac.
Oh, absolutely.
I also thank you for the work that you put in on this to try to get this going. He has been really, like, all the graphics and stuff. That's all him. He does a hell of a job with this. He does and we came out right at rock and roll mostly because of him. I mean, I can come on and just pontificate and bullshit as long as I want, because I'm good at that. But as far as the little aspects of it, the production, the logos, the color schemes, the naming, the imagery, all done by Mac. Yep. So I wanted to be able to give him his proper due, because I didn't want him thinking that I'm coming in here and just be like, oh, it's all me. Fuck this. Like, it's...
No, I think, you and I, not only including the friendship that we've had for so long, but just being able to kind of do two different things at the same time while also coming together and talking about some of this stuff, whether it be the graphics, whether it be about wrestling or anything else. It's just, it works for both of us. So I definitely appreciate those words. Thank you.
No, because you deserve it. I want to be able to come out and admit that this is it and fully give you the props that you deserve, because this is a team effort.
Yep.
And it's just one of those deals where it's like, you are one of the few people that I have 100% trust in as far as things are concerned. It's just like, I know he's going to be there. I know he's going to be able to get this done, and it'll be done. I'm not worried about it. And that's the way that we've operated. And so far, it's been great. I expect this to continue without question. And me not getting tired of this. Like, I look forward to this. I look forward to being able to come on with these topics that, and there's a lot of repetitiveness that is going to be happening for the next couple of weeks, because everybody's gearing up for Mania.
Yep.
And especially after this weekend because there's no more major shows left. It's pretty much the entire month of March is just going to be us talking about what happened on Raw and SmackDown every week, and just leading up to WrestleMania. So, but next week we're going to have a good distraction because we'll be able to talk about the video game. But
I think we'll be able to talk about that, and I think at one point, probably the week after, or whenever, we could probably see what we can do with the gameplay on here and see if we can get something recorded, whether it be with both of us or just my screen or whatever else have you. I think that'll be cool to do too. Maybe it'll be like the shoot games or something like that, man. I don't know.
Well, we were discussing it before, but I am planning on, because I'm a Boston Red Sox fan, as is Mac, because we're both massholes. And this year is not going to be fun to be a Red Sox fan at all. So I ended up blowing up my MLB The Franchise, MLB The Show franchise, and the roster, and am now going to do my, as people would say, the sinister GM that I am, being able to build a Red Sox team that will guarantee to win the World Series.
So I should clarify that just real quick, and who better than me to do this, right? Dan is one of those types of people that when he plays games like this, he stacks the teams that he is using. Just absolutely stacks them. I remember one time, I forget which year it was, which game it was. It was one of the NBA games. Yes. And you just scored like 200 something points.
Yes.
It was just ridiculous.
The famous line from one of our friends, Johnny, says 200 to 10.
Yep.
He's like 200 to 10. He's like, do you think, like, I got Shaq hitting threes, I got Kobe hitting threes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's become, and it's still like that, because I'll probably be playing NBA 2K at certain points too on the stream, because especially the way that NBA 2K is, because literally every player in NBA history except for Reggie Miller and Charles Barkley is in NBA 2K. Every player conceivably in their history is in the game. So you want to talk about stacking teams? Well, for one thing, I could be the Lakers and have Magic Johnson, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and Shaq as my starting five. If I
How long have you been sitting on that one?
Then if I wanted to play, if I was the Celtics, it would probably be Jason Tatum, Paul Pierce, Larry Bird, Kevin Garnett, and at point guard, Michael Jordan. Little things little ideas that may come across of just being able to. Hey, you remember my famous Madden games on the old Xbox, like Madden 05?
I tried to forget.
Why the fuck do you have? How did you afford all these guys? I don't know. Like,
because you turned the salary cap off. Yeah. That's why.
Yes.
Like
it got better in Madden. The Madden. There's a reason I still keep playing the same Madden that I've been playing now for like 7 years. Madden 17. Gronk's on the cover. So I hadn't played a Madden in a couple of years, and a buddy of mine texts me, and he's just like, "Have you played Madden 17 yet?" I said, "No." He's like, "You know, you can change the player ages in franchise mode, right?" I literally dropped what I was doing and went and bought the game that very day. And not only did he tell me that, but he neglected to tell me that you can actually set the everybody's salary for what you want it to, like, and what the cap hit would be and all that stuff. So you could literally build an all pro team and then still be like 35 million under the cap. I mean,
yeah, I remember I haven't played a Madden game in years, so I feel like this is something we are going to have to do just for that sake.
Yes.
Right. But I remember the one year where you could just like submit the offers for the players, and just like I remember I don't know if it was you or somebody else just sitting there, and you would just like incrementally increase until they finally accepted it. And it, like sometimes it was just such garbage numbers, like try to get like Tom Brady for like $1 million. Okay, I'll give him $2 million. Okay, I'll give him $3 million. Okay, I'll give him $4 million. And just sitting there, just keep doing it. And it was funny because you just see offer rejected, offer rejected, offer rejected. Come on, baby, I'm gonna get him sometime.
The one thing that people hate that I do, and they'll probably hate it in the game, is the fact of that I always do trade override. So it's like, either way, you're going to take my fucking offer. I really don't care.
Yep.
The only Madden does not do trade override though, so I actually have to work at it. Like, I actually have to come up with things, and I'm like, you know, like I have to do like little tinkering around.
Yeah, it's I miss those games, but I don't. Right, like I remember creating the character and putting him through the training camps and all that stuff, but I don't know, man. Once you got to like PlayStation Network and Xbox Live and all that stuff, I kind of lost interest because, like, sometimes playing. No offense, like sometimes playing with these people is just incredibly toxic.
I'm not that toxic. I'm actually
not you. I'm not saying you.
No.
You're toxic when it's you and me,
right?
But I also know you very well.
If because I remember one where one time we were playing. I was playing on my own TV with an Xbox, and you were playing on your own TV. And every so often, every time I would pick a pass up, you'd be like, I just hear it from the other room.
Yeah, you were in the guest room. I was in the other bedroom. And I think we had like a LAN going on.
Yes.
And you picked me off. And I remember just yelling, ah! That was supposed to be a swear, by the way, just saying. And just, I remember that. And I don't think you were there, but I remember those LAN games too, man. Not just with like the sports games, but especially with Halo. Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Those were fun. And I remember you were there one time, I think it was at my house, and just everybody's kind of like losing their mind. And that was one of our quote unquote mutual friends, quote unquote friend. Oh my God, you guys keep killing me, always from behind. He was, oh man, he was a gem, that guy. He should have been on How to Catch a Predator. But anyways.
He should have.
He should have, I know.
He should have.
Oh my God.
How is he not?
I don't know.
There were some weird people that we dealt with in college that was just like, but we also knew probably from very early on that once we left college, we would never speak to them again. Like, it would just be like, that's it. That's the end of the road on that one.
So, you know, it's funny you say that because you and I bonded over a mutual hatred of the same person.
We did.
That's essentially how we met. And ironically, it was not the person we're talking about, but somebody else.
No. Who,
from my understanding, is this person's like an author now, by the way.
Come again?
Yeah, he's an author. I don't think he's like a, you know, hi, I'm like millions of readers kind of author, but he's still an author.
What's he doing? Erotic fan fiction?
I know you can't see me, but just I'm shaking my head right now. Because you're probably not wrong. Supposedly it's like fantasy novels, which whatever.
Of course.
Yeah. You know, the snapping the snapping turtles and everything. But the person who we're talking about in terms of who How to Catch a Predator, yeah, I let that friendship go on way too long. not proud moment, but you know, you're right. There are some people that you look at like, okay, I'm gonna be friends with you now, but I know once I'm out of this situation, I'll call it learning environment, whatever the case may be, probably not going to talk to you much again.
No. There's certain people from college. It's just like, and some certain people I've reconnected with recently that it's like, oh, you know, like, okay. But then
Some of them you look at, though, to that context, and you're like, man, now I remember why I don't like talking to you.
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and I've been fortunate that the majority of my friends, my inner circle, really they haven't changed in 20 something years. Like as far as the close friends are concerned, it's like there's like a core 4 or 5, and then that's pretty much it.
No, it's about the same with me, I would say.
Yeah, it's just I'd rather keep my circle tiny and small, because I don't know. The whole concept of like, I want to be extremely popular and everybody like me. Yeah, that concept is dumb and stupid. It's just all these friends just contacting you randomly. It's just like, you know what? I don't want that. It's just, it's not fun.
You know what? I think that you have that because you still live in the state. I don't. People still hit me up occasionally, but it's not like that. It's not like every time they need something to hit me up, because when I still lived up in Massachusetts, excuse me, that's definitely what the problem was. It was like all the time. Like I remember, I'm just going to call him the fresh one. I'll tell you the reference later off air if you don't remember that one, but he like hit me up. He's just like, I need a ride home. And there's like a cop with him. So needless to say, probably like a Dewey in the moment, right? But I'm just like, really? Like, it's like past midnight at this point. Calls me because he knew I'd still be awake. And it was just like, yeah, I need a ride. And then the cop was like, where is he? Like, where is he from? Where does he live? What town is he in currently? And I was living, I think in Dedham at the time, Dedham, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And the cop was like, yeah, it's too far, no. and then he goes, the fresh one goes, all right, man, sorry, I guess you can't come get me then, and hung up the phone. Like, I'm thankful I don't have to deal with that. And to an extent, you don't either, because you're not driving, so...
Oh, yeah.
That's at least
I lucked out on that end.
Yeah, you did. You did.
I luck out on that end, too, because it's like so many times where it was just like, well, Dan's going to get trashed because he doesn't have to drive.
Yeah, who's the designated driver? Not Dan.
Not Dan.
Even though I think you probably did at one point for Buran.
Yes, no, I did. That was an emergency situation.
Oh, I'm aware. Yeah, I heard.
It was like, all right.
So Dan, did you hear we're on the road to WrestleMania? Yeah, I know. Statute of limitations. I'm sure like there's like a Canton cop or something right now. Listen to this, like motherfuckers. But anyway, did you hear we're on the road
not the state cops?
Oh my God. Well, that's all we can say, folks. Read the news. That's all we'll say. Read the news for Canton and other surrounding areas. Yep, as Dan is just like, shut your mouth, bro. Shut up!
Not saying nothing.
Yep. Exactly. So, yeah, this Saturday, the WWE returns to Australia. I say returns because they haven't been there in quite a long time. And
I think 6 years. I think that they were there
that's
for
what you said,
Super Showdown, yeah.
Right. So, this Saturday, starting at 5 a.m. for the pre-show, Eastern Standard Time, that is. 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show starts for Elimination Chamber in Perth, Australia. If you don't know where that is, look it up. Western Australia, that's all I'll tell you. I don't know. You don't need to know, really.
You don't.
So, I have the slide up now, Dan, and I just want to kind of tell you what the matchups are and have you kind of go through them after I explain them, because I know some people don't know the full card, and I actually had to look it up myself just to be safe, because all I remembered was a couple of them. So one of the matchups not in the Elimination Chamber, I'll go through those first, is for the Women's World Championship, champion Rhea Ripley against Nia Jax. For the undisputed tag team titles, we have the Judgment Day, Finn Balor and Damian Priest against Tyler Bate and I almost wanted to say Butch, but Pete Dunne, whatever.
Peter Dunne!
Yep. For the Elimination Chamber matches, we have the women's match, which this past week was just interesting how this went down. And kind of talk about this one a little bit later, I think. But we have Raquel Rodriguez, Liv Morgan, Naomi, Becky Lynch, Tiffany Stratton, and Bianca Belair. For the men's side of things, we have Kevin Owens, Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton, LA Knight, and Logan Paul. Which is a little bit interesting for that one, but we'll kind of talk about that one too. Then we also have a special segment. There are only those matches. The special segment, which I think a lot of us are kind of looking forward to because we know something is going to go down, is a special episode, quote unquote, of the Grayson Waller Effect with Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. So Dan, I'll let you kick this segment off. Pick wherever you want to go first. Doesn't matter to me.
Well, I think as far as order of importance, we should probably just start off with the Weller Effect.
I agree.
With Cody and Seth.
Yeah.
Only because of the fact that you and I both firmly believe that this is going to somehow turn into a tag team match. Unless they don't want Seth to compete because of his injury, if they want to save him to WrestleMania. Because I don't know if he's had surgery. Problem is, there's so many questions right now about Seth Rollins, and it's going to drive me effing nuts. Because if he doesn't compete at the Elimination Chamber, then the question is, then he's going to be off for the whole month of March. So then you're wondering, okay, how's he going to feel? He's not going to really be taking bumps, is he? He's not going to be like, because all he's doing is coming out and looking pretty in his little outfit suits, as Roman said, Roman said at that press conference. Look, you came in your wife's shoes.
Yep,
that's fantastic. Like, I'll say Roman butchered his ass so hard. That promo that Seth cut after the Royal Rumble, everybody was telling me how great it was. And I'm just like, okay. And then I saw Roman's response, and I'm just like, Roman won that one. It's like, you work 10 times more than I do, but I get paid 10 times more than you do.
Yep.
For working 10 times less. And it's just like, done. It's over. Forget it.
Yep.
Because he's like, he calls him, he's like, all you do is play dress up on Monday nights. Like, that's all you do. I show up, people care. They still put the one up. You have to dress up for people, you know? And it was so, it was so good of a comeback, but also demeaning because Seth right now is kind of just like, you remember the episode of Family Guy where they did the superpowers introduction?
Yeah.
You know, it's like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, and Seth Rollins. You know, it's just that's kind of where I kind of feel with this whole thing. You know, because Cody is your number one baby face. He's going to be the guy that's going to take the throne. Then you have Roman Reigns, who's been champion now for 3.5 years. And then you have one of the biggest stars in the history of not only professional wrestling, but in the history of cinema and film and all that stuff. And then you have Seth Rollins. Rollins can sit there and be like, well, I was Ring of Honor champion and I've been champion of this company a couple of times. And Rollins is also at a point in his career where if this was 10 years ago, if this was Seth Rollins when he still had the half bleached and the half dark hair look, Seth at that point was a phenomenal in-ring performer, but as a character, he was not great. Not great at all. He didn't have it. He needed to kind of get his voice under control, or if he needed to turn it up a bit, because I felt like Seth Rollins in 2015 was Tyler Black in Ring of Honor. He was still working as an indie performer. and how his character base was, and not his just the rest. He was focused on the in-ring work, which, yes, that's a big part of it. Not saying it isn't. But it was not enough for him to be able to be considered a top star. And we had, there was an argument that somebody had made. I think it was me, and then John did. We were doing a setup. We were talking, went on another show with Mark, and we were talking about the fact that I had mentioned it. I said, Seth Rollins has never been more over than he is right now.
Yep.
And he was just like, he was champion in 2015. I don't understand. You could say it. And I said, yes, he was champion in 2015. He was also champion in 2019. But his character sucked.
Well,
now
the thing is, Mark was also trying to bait us to say that it was because of the song, which, was not the case, and nobody went for that bait. But
no, I understand it. I understood what Mark was trying to say, and I understood it because the music and stuff like that. Yep. Is it a catchy song? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's also because they show him the respect that he deserves because they realize how good of a performer he is.
Correct.
I still remember when he was wrestling Dolph Ziggler in an Iron Man match for the Intercontinental Championship. And this was 2018, around 2018, I believe this was happening. And they were leaving before during the match to beat traffic. They were doing other stuff to kind of the crowd was. They lost interest. They weren't showing, I thought, Seth the proper respect that he deserved. They never really kind of gave Dolph the respect that he deserved either, but that's besides the point. That's why he doesn't work for the company anymore, and that's part of the reason why. But the thing with Seth is the fact that there were a lot of points in his career where I was just like, what is it that he's missing? And he's finally found that.
I have to laugh after last week when we shit all over him for the man's man.
Well, yeah, it's just that was a part of it, but also just the fact of he just couldn't. He felt uncomfortable. He felt uncomfortable in front of the camera.
It was just so after that.
I just want to be a wrestler. I don't want to be a character. And I understand he had to go, and he probably feels like, well, I had to go really over the top and be Vaught. But you know what? Savage was a great performer too, and he was a fucking 11 constantly. You just have to sometimes. You have to, it's like this goes to 11. Why don't you just make 10 louder? This goes to 11. That's what they had to do. Savage did the same thing. And people are going to sit there and be like, well, is he comparing Randy Savage to Seth Rollins? As an in-ring performer, yes. As a character
why can't we,
yes.
though? Why can't we, though? Because if you look at it, Nash did it a couple months ago. Nash compared him to a modern-day Macho Man. So I don't think that's unfair.
And the problem is that the company, they tend to regard the guys that they know they can put on the Today Show and Good Morning America and give a good interview. That's what Cody is. Cody's that guy you could put out the day after WrestleMania on a national talk show, have him hold the belt, have him there with the suit on, have his wife there, have his baby, all that stuff, all of it. And they look at Cody and they just say, this is that guy. The Christmas card is going to be the portrait of him and Brandy holding the championship and the child. That's the Christmas card with Pharaoh there too, the dog.
Yep.
That's the cover that they want for the Christmas card this year. That's the cover also for the Christmas card that the fan base wants. And it's unfortunate because Seth is playing fourth wheel on this. And that's hard. That's hard. And he hasn't re-signed his contract either, which, when you're dealing with the amount of money that TKO is throwing around and the fact that Drew McIntyre really has done himself many good favors lately. and the fact of that they're in a position now, they can't get rid of him. He can't leave. They need to keep, because he is so hot as a heel that you need to keep him, because he's probably going to be the guy that's going to win the title if Seth has to go down for an injury and if he walks out of the men's elimination chamber later. More on that later. Yeah. So, because I have my own ideas on what's going to happen. But, you know.
No, I do as well, right? And it could go a number of ways. But speaking specifically to this, I would just want to go back to Raw for a second, where the opening match was Cody versus Drew McIntyre. Bloodline, aka Solo, aka Jimmy, come out. Distractions, Simone spikes, and Drew ends up winning the match because the referee didn't really notice, I guess. Whatever. And then Cody is in the trainer's room right after that, and Seth Rollins comes in kind of like, hey, what's up? You want that shield? And it's ironic that obviously the Saturday after this, we're going into Elimination Chamber with the Grayson Waller effect, and those are his guests. I want to go back to your bump comment real quick, because I do feel it's important to say so. I don't think he's going to take one, and if he does, it's going to be very light. It's going to be something where, they hit him with something and he goes down. It's not going to be something where he's going to be put in any kind of situation that would increase the healing time of his already injured leg and maybe back too. But I think it's interesting calling it him as like this fourth loose wheel, so to speak, because it's almost true. And they have marketed this in such a way that is almost kind of going back to WrestleMania 1. They did this at that press conference, I guess to call it, when they first really went into who Cody was going to choose, and obviously the other matches as well. But do you think that at this point, night one is really just going to be Seth and Cody versus Rock and Roman, and then night two is Cody and Roman at that point? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think, look, there's arguments that can be made. I made the argument last year because, especially with what happened at WrestleMania 38, where you had Steve Austin main eventing night one. You can do that. Because I said the argument last year. I said, okay, look. I said, if you're going to do Roman Rock, do it on night one. No, you can't do it night one. Why the fuck not? Why can't you do it night one? Well, Rock should be on night two, main eventing.
Why?
Austin did it the year before.
Yeah.
He had no problem with it. Nobody had a problem with night one. Everybody talked about how great night one was. Because also, Austin probably didn't want the stress of having to main event night two, because night two, that's the night everyone's focused. Because it's the very last match of the 2 days. So everybody is focused on that. And, they've learned from their mistakes a couple of years ago, where you can't have your main event going on at like 12:30 in the morning when people have been watching a fucking 7-hour show. Can't do it. Those days are over. They went to the 2-night model, mostly probably because of COVID too. But they also kind of figured, if we get this company in a good path, we can sell out both nights. Not only do we not have to worry about selling this stadium once, we can do it twice, back-to-back nights. We can make more fucking money.
Well, that, and they have the experience now too, or the world of WrestleMania now, whatever it is.
And these cities are just, Philly paid, Tampa paid for the Royal Rumble. These cities are bidding on it now. It's like the Super Bowl, because they understand the amount of revenue that's going to come into their town. Philly's going to easily make $200 probably $250 million in revenue as far as hotels are concerned, small businesses. Everybody's going to be going. Cheesesteaks that weekend are probably going to break records. Jesus. They're going to sell more cheesesteaks in that weekend than they probably did in the entire time of the fucking Phillies in the '08 World Series. Like, they'll probably sell more than, like, that's a baseball series. They're selling out 2 nights back to back. They're selling out where the Eagles play. So the hardcores are going to be there. And it's Philly is, it's, as far as wrestling towns are concerned, it's in the top 5.
Yeah.
Because they're assholes in Philly.
Yep.
Not just as sports fans, but wrestling fans, because the greatest wrestling company that is not WWE came out of that city, and I still love that city for it. I hate their fan base, yet I love them so much at the same time. And that's the annoying part, because when they beat the Patriots in Super Bowl 52, I wanted to kill them. Like, because they wouldn't shut up. But it's okay, because we went back the next year and won anyways. And they haven't gone back yet either. So it's not like I'm going to sit here and be like, well, good for Philly, you know? Like, they beat us in the Super Bowl. Oh, God. So that took a bit to get over. But we won the next year, so I didn't care. Now, I'm on good terms with Philly again. And as far as and I like Bryce Harper. So, like, I like the Phillies. Like, I do. The only team I really don't like is, like, the Flyers. And it's only because I think they're stupid. Like, this is a stupid name.
Yeah.
Philadelphia Flyers is a stupid name.
It's funny talking about Pennsylvania teams, because, man, if this was in Pittsburgh, oh, man, I would hate a lot more of those teams.
Oh, my God. Yeah, because, you know, the reason why we would hate, if it was in Pittsburgh, we would hate it, is because, you know, the goddamn fucking logo would be black and yellow. And I'd want to puke, because there is the Pittsburgh anything are at the top of my
That's
shit
what I'm
list.
saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
The Penguins, the fucking Steelers. Like, I can't even say Steelers without saying without an expletive in front of them. Like, that's just how much I hate the goddamn Steelers. And I'm sure if we got any Pittsburgh fans on this, they're immediately going to turn us off. Well, good, because fuck you. You're in Pittsburgh. Like, I'm going to sit here and fucking be like, whoa, ooh, oh, no. Oh, Pittsburgh. They don't like us in Pittsburgh because we shit on them. Fuck you.
I mean, listen, I apologize. I wish I could say in advance. I wish I could say in advance, but I can't, obviously, now. But I hate the Penguins. I hate the Pirates. I hate the Steelers. I hate all the Pittsburgh teams.
It's just the worst.
I remember.
It's awful.
I remember, and I apologize again, Pittsburgh fans, when the Penguins were up like 3-0 in a series against Boston. All these like Pittsburgh newscasters were like, "Oh yeah, they're gonna win," blah, blah, blah. And then the next 4 games, the Bruins just absolutely slapped them. This was like a few years ago, obviously, and just the amount of like, oh, we didn't win after the Bruins beat them 4 games in a row to advance. It never gets old for me. It just doesn't.
The amount of times that we had to play the Steelers and everybody would automatically pick the Steelers, and it was just like, that was the annoying part. Like, and it was every time in the playoffs, everybody automatically picked the Steelers, and I was just like, why? What have they done? When have they ever lost, especially in the Brady era, when have they ever lost to us in a meaningful game, beat us in a meaningful game? It's never happened.
I mean, if we're going to go that route, we'll be here all night. And I feel like it's that. Oh man, I forget the guy's name. Tom Hardy, I think it is.
Yeah,
that's bait. That's bait.
that's bait. That's bait.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just is.
I'll be honest though, I do love, as far as the work ethic in Pittsburgh, I do like the work ethic, the steel mill, that whole era. Like, I'm not going to sit here and knock the entire city, even though you put coleslaw on burgers, which I still don't fucking get.
All right, that's still bait. I'm just move on. Let's go. Get out of here. Get out of here. I don't pull rank on this show usually, but we're done. We're done talking about fucking Pittsburgh right now. Sorry, Pittsburgh. I love you, but I also don't.
Love you, Pittsburgh, but I don't.
Yeah. All right. So, in order of importance, I agree that was the order of the night. The Grayson Waller effect will probably be one of the more non-wrestling but still entertaining segments of the evening because the Bloodline is going to show up. I think it would be a complete disservice to the Australian fans if at least The Rock, if not both him and Roman Reigns, did not show up. Just saying.
Roman ain't making that flight.
I don't know, man.
He's like, kiss my ass. I ain't making that flight.
I feel like The Rock then might show up, but yeah, I feel like one of them is going to show up. And I do want to switch gears for a second. Speaking of The Rock, how did you feel about last Friday's segment with him? I thought it was kind of telling him coming out the way he came out and going full heel again. I saw a couple other podcasts and other blogs and stuff that were talking about the fact that he came out the way he did with the jewelry back on, with the shirt, with the sunglasses that he never took off, and kind of giving us a taste of full heel Rock again. What were your, I guess, thoughts kind of going into that segment? For me, when I watched it, I watched it late. I didn't watch it live because I was so shot that night. But I remember watching it a few days later and just kind of going like, wow, full heel. And just having that full vibe of him going off on the crowd like he did in like the late 90s, early 2000s, especially Hollywood Rock, and just like shitting on people, telling somebody in the crowd that he's fat and he's going to slap the herpes off his lips. How did you feel about that segment, though?
I know I was kind of hard on the whole Rock situation, talking about his, especially like our first episode or two. I really came down hard on him only because it was like, I was instant reacting to to stuff that was going on, and I was pissed off only because of the track record of the company,
right?
Where I've seen them do things like this on more than one occasion. The fact is that I forgot what pivot booking is, or not pivot booking, but more or less, it's what Triple H is doing. It's happened before. As far as like, this might be the main event, but it might not. They've done it before, and the company has done it before. This might have been the plan the whole time. I don't know. Like, we could go for days on what that would be, but I feel like, especially, I didn't come out immediately and tell people that I've always been a fan of The Rock. That I wouldn't be. It would be a massive disservice for me to say that I'm not. I own action figures of him. Do I worship the ground he walks on? No. I will admit that the Fast series got a lot better with him in it.
It did. I agree.
Like, it did. He made it better. So for me to sit here and just go negative full on about The Rock, does he politic sometimes? Yeah, but every top star does. In the history of the industry. John Cena was guilty of it. Hulk Hogan was sure as hell guilty of it.
Doesn't work for me, brother. Creative control, brother.
Steve Austin was guilty of it. There was people that he just said, I'm not working with them, period.
Brock too.
Brock too. There's guys, every top guy, I think at one point, probably Roman, I'm sure.
Probably.
The way that he's been able to keep the championship with these layoffs. Come on, folks. Don't fucking sit here and tell me that's not politicking. Like, that's unselfish. No, come on. He's holding the title hostage. And that's, you know, and all this stuff of people just saying automatically that he's going to retain. It's like, okay. But the way that I'm seeing things with The Rock is I'm seeing the things that made me a fan of him in the first place. I loved him as a babyface because he was funny, but I love him as a heel more because he's funny, but he's also a complete asshole.
Yep.
And the best of him was always 97 when he was with the Nation into 98. And then, you know, and then he turned babyface for a bit, which was fine. But he still was in a position. See, in 98, he was still in a position where it was like, okay, he's a babyface, but he's still going. Like, he's still not below Austin. And the only way he was going to be the number one guy in any position was if he leapfrogged him into being the number one bad guy.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what he did, and it worked. And the reason that got him there is the same reason that I saw this past Friday. And
so
the same thing that he did 12 years ago when he was the heel character.
Right. So one follow-up to that is, were you surprised at all that he kind of sided with Roman Reigns, or were you kind of like, let's see what happens here?
I'm not surprised.
So maybe a little bit of both.
I'm not surprised. It's kind of like a both thing because it is surprising to see him in that position, but also I think he sensed it. The great ones, not coining a phrase either, I'm trying to play on words, but the guys who just immediately know this isn't working. When he was getting booed at that press conference, I think it clicked in his head. I'm just like, all right, fuck it.
Maybe.
I'm going. No, he just said, fuck this. I'm going. Or if this is the plan the whole time, where it's just like, fuck it. Let's just side with each other. Because why not coronate Cody and set up a main event for next year? You know,
I like
or
that.
for down the line. You know, like it's because for the title, it's the most important thing. The only thing I could think of is, and this will actually make Cody a bigger star if this happens. So let's say they do the tag team match that we talked about, right? And Cody somehow pins Rock or something happens, and Roman gets pissed, turns on him, or something happens where there's some sort of, but it ends up with Rock is getting beaten up.
Right.
And so night 2, same bullshit they're going to try with Jimmy, and Rock doesn't get involved to an extent, but he does. And I mean, I don't want there to be interference in the match between Cody and Roman. I don't want there to be.
Yeah, especially after last year, too.
Feel like
it's going to happen.
The best possible solution is Rock either avenges what happened the night before or completely fucks him over.
Okay.
I feel like that has to be the direction they go, because you have to get the title off him, and you have to. And I feel like that maybe Rock is trying to, or this is the plan again the whole time, because I'm tired of kind of speculating.
It's
I don't want to
tough.
speculate. Yeah, it's tough to sit there and be like, well, this is the plan. No, I don't know.
I don't think it was.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't. It could have gone either way at this point, and that's either here nor there. And you know what the best part about it is that when you have to guess and try to figure it out, that's when you know it's just like, fuck, they got us.
Yeah. And I feel like that's going to be this year, especially.
And I feel like that's where this is going.
Yeah.
At this point, they're going to, at the end of this, we're all going to be sitting there and being like, fuck, they got us.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be laughing and jumping for joy at the same time, because it's just like, we're going to give you everything you want right here.
Yeah. I
it's
really
like,
hope
okay.
it's not like last year where I'm throwing my phone across the hotel room. I really.
I don't think it's going to be that this year.
I don't either, but I'm still just going to say I'm hopeful. All right. So good thoughts. I think that it's interesting because there's so much speculation about how these things are going to go down. We'll have to see Saturday, obviously, for this. But in terms of the other matches that we still have to kind of discuss, I'm going to choose one real quick because I feel like after the Waller segment, maybe the most important secondary match or primary match, I don't even know, depending, is the men's elimination chamber. Because when we're talking about Seth Rollins, obviously whoever wins the men's elimination chamber match is set to face Seth Rollins, or I'll say whoever the world champion is, just to be safe.
Yes.
So we have KO, Bobby Lashley, Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre, LA Knight, and Logan Paul. I'm always going to say his name like that, folks. I apologize in advance. But thoughts on this one? Whether it be who starts, who ends up leaving first, the winner, whatever you want to go through here.
I think Logan Paul's going to start it and might go the whole thing. He might go like a long way. Like they might have that much faith in him where they have him start and see how long, if he can go the whole length of it or something.
Okay.
I just... Look, I wanted to hate this. I wanted to fucking hate this guy 2 years ago.
I think everybody did.
I wanted to. I wanted to sit here and be like, this was a bad fucking investment. They've done this. This fucking guy doesn't take it seriously. He doesn't get... But you know what the problem is? I have to sit here like everybody else and say, fuck it, I was wrong. I want to hate this kid. I want to fucking bury him beyond belief. Every fucking thing that this guy has ever done before professional wrestling, some of the antics that he did, the whole fucking incident in fucking Japan, I'm not going to get into it, or China, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Don't want to even bring it up. But I want to hate this fucking guy. I want to bury him. And I want to sit here and just be like, he's bad for this industry. He's not. He's not. That's the fucking problem. That's the problem I'm having, is it's just like, but I can't. He is a fantastic professional wrestler.
He is.
He can do whatever. He has no fear. He can do what he wants. He takes it fucking seriously. And it pains me to say this. Pains me to fucking say this.
All right, Dan's having a moment, so listen, I agree. Maybe not so much with that case, but I definitely agree that everybody thought the same about Logan Paul.
Sorry.
Go, absolutely
No. I didn't want to cut you off, but I just, The problem is I'm having a moment where it's just like, because I'm trying to think if they do it now, if you can, but look, I'm going to be the first one to, this is, again, it's because it's not David Arquette. It's not David Arquette. It's not David Arquette. Here's the deal.
Is that your mantra?
Yes, because I'm trying to remind myself, because what I'm about to say bothers the shit out of me.
So hold on, before you say that, right? Just let me say this real quick. So he is not David Arquette.
No,
Bad Bunny is not David Arquette.
No, they're not.
I would even make the argument that Snooki was not David Arquette.
No, I people give Snooki shit. I don't.
I think you got about what you would expect from her. That's the thing.
Here's the thing with her. I've always had a soft spot for her.
I can't imagine why.
I don't know. People can.
All right, but my point is this.
JWoww, it's like I've always had a soft spot for them. Yeah, I know.
Yep.
We know.
JWoww definitely for me. Anyways, Snooki too. Like I'll be real.
Yes.
But the thing is this, right? Like my point of saying those names is that David Arquette was a different situation. It was also a different time. Putting the belt on him, the WCW World Heavyweight Championship on him was stupid. Let's be realistic. Yeah, okay, they're trying to market a movie. That's not what this is. This is not what Logan Paul was doing. This is not what Bad Bunny is doing. And this is not what Snooki was doing. They're trying to bring more eyes into their platform, to their company, to wrestling. And I am all for that. You've said this on Pro Wrestling World Talks. Like, wrestling is meant to be beautiful and enjoyable.
Yes.
And that's what that was, right? Those were enjoyable moments, and I would even make the argument at this point that regardless of your feelings for Logan Paul, he is making wrestling enjoyable, and he's bringing those eyes into it, and I'm all for that. As much as I don't like him either, I just don't have moments about it. I get it, but none of those people are David Arquette. That was stupid. All right, now that I've said that, continue, please.
The reason I was having a moment is because I could see him becoming WWE champion.
I can too, but go ahead.
That's where I'm trying to sit here and kind of go over, because look, I don't hate the guy as much as I used to. I used to think he was a pariah, but at the same time, I get it now because he's in an industry that he was really good at before, as far as getting eyes on the product. As far as getting eyes on his brand, he was great at it.
He still is.
And he's still great at it.
Yeah.
And he's doing that and being able to now just saying, you got these kids that probably didn't even know what this shit was, or their dad or son, or, they didn't know what pro wrestling was. And now because of him, they're just like, wow, this is cool stuff. He's got a built-in audience, he's got this, and they're coming to see him, whether it's just him or not. It's like, look, he's held the championship well because he's taking it with him on everywhere. He's taking it, which I want him to do. You have such a social media presence. I want to see that fucking title everywhere you are. Like, I don't care what you're fucking doing with it. You want to pawn it? Go right ahead. Fuck it. As long as it's out there. Because that's the logo of the company. It's there. They're going to look at it and they're just going to be like, what's this WWE that Logan Paul's talking about?
Yeah, it's free marketing. Yeah.
It is. It's perfect. Like, you can't buy that type of... If he wants to keep doing this for as long as he is, and plus, he says he wants to work full time. All right, kid. Fuck it. Sky's the limit. Like, I can't sit here and knock it. I can't sit here at this. It wasn't a publicity stunt, maybe at first, but I had a suspicion. I'm like, that first WrestleMania when he did that frog splash, and then he did like a Three Amigos or something, I'm just like, he's one of the better workers right now that they have. Like, this is sickening. Like,
you know what it was for me?
He's just gotten better.
Yeah, he really has. But you know what it was for me? I didn't hate that match. I didn't hate the one he had with Roman. But it's really that one with Rey Mysterio, man, that I think sold a lot of people. Because again, like those first few matches, first couple of matches, whatever, like you can tell there's some talent there. And I'm pretty sure he was injured in the Roman match too, but he still continued the match, if I'm not mistaken. But that match with Rey Mysterio, where not only did he save Rey from an injury, let's be realistic, but that moonsault slam, splash, whatever it was, man, that was a pretty sick move. And that's something that I at least for me, I had never seen something like that before. It really reminded me, and I don't know how you feel about this, and I almost hate making the comparison. God rest him. You probably can figure out where I'm going to go now. It really, to me, shot back to the WCW days where it was Rey versus Eddie.
Yeah.
It really did. And I can't believe I'm comparing Logan Paul to Eddie Guerrero, but it just really called back to those days. And just seeing moves that you would never really seen before. And I hate it. I do. Because you want to hate him. He's an
excellent wrestler.
He is. And he's an even better heel, too, which is funny.
Fantastic.
He is.
I'm in a position now where it's like, I'm looking at Logan Paul action figures. I'm like, I fucking hate myself. Like, you're thinking about it. Like, it's in the shopping cart on Amazon. And I'm just like, I don't know if I want to do it. Like, just, because you worry about guys like that sometimes where it's just like, oh, he's an idiot. He's going to get himself in trouble. He's cleaned himself up. He's smart enough to know the amount of pull that he has.
Right.
I think we all did what he did at his age. We all pushed limits. We all were stupid. We all did it. And he just did it on a much bigger platform. And, but we all did it.
No, you're right. So I want to touch on some of the other people in this match instead of just, going about Logan Paul.
Yeah.
I feel like looking at the slide right now, from left to right is KO and Bobby Lashley. I feel like neither of them is going to win this match. I'm just going to throw it out like that. They're in decent positions to have good matches, probably at WrestleMania, if not after. But I feel like it's just not in the cards for them to win this match. Next is Randy Orton and Drew. I feel like if there are a final three, so to speak, it's one of them is probably going to be Randy. I think Drew might make it to the last two or three, kind of like you were saying about Logan Paul. But I feel like Drew is going to come up short because that's just kind of the motif they've kind of been playing him into this past year. So right now I have Randy in the winner's circle, at least one of the final three for sure. And then Logan Paul and LA Knight are the last on the picture. And I'm very conflicted. I would say if I was going to pick winners, they would also be in the winner's circle. Because despite the losing, you still have a very strong following for LA Knight. I just feel that for the Seth Rollins title, it's not going to work. As much as I would love to see LA Knight over, because I feel like he's got such a fan following at this point, I just feel like face versus face is not something they're really going to do. Randy Orton, you could kind of make the same argument, but closing out the night with Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania as your two champions would just be very poetic justice. And then I can't believe I'm kind of agreeing with you here about Logan Paul, but if you have any of the heels in this match, really there's 2 to 3 heels. You could make the argument Bobby Lashley is a heel at this point, even though he's really not, considering he's facing off against the Final Testament, Bob Ellering, AOP, Karrion Kross. He's more of a face at this point. You have Drew McIntyre and Logan Paul as the last 2 heels, and Logan Paul versus Seth Rollins is something that's been discussed in the past. So if I was thinking about this logically, probably is going to be Logan Paul, and that's scary a little bit to me.
Well, I think Logan Paul in the main event spot, but the problem is that he wouldn't be in a main event spot because
Correct.
if they're going to do it, they're doing night one. He's not going to be getting so. I don't know if you want to do it.
Hold on. Let's clarify that for a second. That's actually a good comment that you made, because if anything, they might do it night 2. It still wouldn't be the main event, like you said, but if their thought of going with the Waller effect and having Cody and Seth potentially having some kind of a face-off with the Bloodline, potentially kind of what we were thinking before, where it's going to be a main event of a tag team match between Cody and Seth versus Roman and The Rock, there's that chance that match, whether it be Logan Paul or anybody else versus Seth Rollins, would probably happen on night 2. It still wouldn't be the main event, like you said, but it's just a timing thing where it really depends where the other storylines go. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine. I think if you wanted to do Logan Paul challenging for a world championship, it should be in a main event spot at WrestleMania.
Sure.
And it's not going to be the last match on the card, so Drew's got a lot of momentum right now, but Drew challenging again would be obvious, because they've already done it numerous times before, and plus, but I don't know. I don't know. I could see Drew walking out, but I'm kind of in a conundrum with Randy Orton, because it's like, I really want him to get 17. Bad. I really want him to get 17. I'll talk more about that later. But I really want him to get that. So I think Randy Orton versus Seth Rollins, and Orton being in that first title match too, I think he would, because the plan, I'm sure, was CM Punk was going to be winning the Chamber, and it was going to be CM Punk and Seth Rollins night 1.
I mean, either that or it was going to be Cody doing it, instead.
That's true.
It's hard to tell because Punk got injured that night, so we'll never really know the full details for sure, but
no,
it could have gone either way, whether it be Cody or CM Punk. Whichever one was going to win the Rumble, the loser was going to win Chamber. Let's be real about that,
Right. And so I think from that perspective, that either Orton, every person that you said winning makes sense.
Yeah.
LA Knight even makes sense. But I think they've thought about doing LA Knight and Logan Paul too.
Correct. Mania, or KO.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I look at it is Seth has faced KO at WrestleMania. Seth has faced Randy Orton at WrestleMania. I think he faced Logan Paul at one point too. I think he fought him last year, actually.
I don't think that was at Mania, though. Was it?
I think it was Mania last. I could have sworn it was Mania last year. I could be wrong, but I thought it was Seth and Logan because Seth was had lost a few because he lost against Cody at WrestleMania 38.
Right.
So I think 39.
You know what?
It was
You're right.
So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was 39. Yeah, you're right.
So Seth won. So I don't know. So that takes away kind of. And I think Bobby Lashley fought him at one point in no, I don't think it was a Mania. Okay, so I'm right. But I'm sure about the other ones.
He didn't have the belt last year, so they could just do Logan Paul versus Seth Rollins too.
They could.
It'd be the number 2, and then there might be a rubber match down the road. So, I mean, it's not something that I feel is outlandish, but the LA Knight thing is the simple fact that it's two faces. They're both very over. You keep LA Knight in the main event scene, which is beneficial for him because at some point I feel like he is going to win a belt. But the other commentary that you had about him facing Logan Paul for the United States Championship, that's also been discussed numerous times as well. And I think that would be a great feud, honestly. So that would really just leave, in my opinion, to your point about Randy Orton, I'd love to see him to get to 17 too. Just saying. Yeah. Especially after coming back from this injury that he had, like that would be huge.
And it's just, it makes sense. And plus, Orton is a great performer. And Rollins is a better performer the last time they fought because the last time that they fought at Mania was WrestleMania 31, which was 9 years ago. So both of them now are different performers. So you could get away with it. So I think every option really in this match. The problem is it's too close to call, in my opinion, because there's several candidates that I could see winning, which brings me a lot of intrigue in this matchup because I don't know where this is going to lead to.
Yeah, this is really one of those years that I feel like 100%. It's a match that really comes down to the last man because we just don't know. And the factor of Randy Orton also being very close to Cody Rhodes, who, let's be real, if we're talking like we talked last week, is probably going to win that match against Roman Reigns. And maybe even Randy helps him win at that point as the World Heavyweight Champion. Like, who's to say? And I feel like that's important to say too. I feel like there are so many storylines that are going to come from this match too that it's going to make it very fun, but also very interesting, like you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it really could go either way, in my opinion. The only one I consider really that is probably a long shot to win is Lashley, but the other 5, all bets are off.
I would even say KO.
Yeah,
I would say those two, Lashley and KO, are probably the furthest away.
The furthest away, but everybody else is like razor thin close.
Yeah. Even Drew. Which is funny because he's had the opportunities in the past and the most recent past, obviously. So
But Drew has also put himself in a position. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead. I agree.
But Drew has put himself in a position right now where they can't lose him. So if he has not re-signed a contract, you have to be able to re-sign him because he is such an intriguing character and this new, because he's such a dick and he's great at it. And it's just
he really is because that CM Punk shirt exactly. It's hilarious. It is 100%.
So fantastic,
dude. We're on the same wavelength with that. Trust me. It's hilarious because you don't really think about it, and then he comes out with a T-shirt again, and then it's like, oh, who else is going to be next to CM Punk on this shirt? It's just hilarious.
It's just like he has done such a great job. And I love these guys now that I thought a year or two ago, I'm like, they really got to get their shit together.
Yeah.
That have found everything that they were lacking. And
Especially Drew.
Especially Drew. Because Drew, I thought with the kilt and the sword, I was like, why are they doing that? And because they didn't need to do it.
No.
But he's found himself where it's just like, I'm just going to be this. And it's just like, it's worked. It's perfect. Same thing with Rollins. And both those guys right now are in prime position where it's like, my contract's up, so you got to start fucking paying us.
Yeah.
Because I know I could go elsewhere and get paid a lot more money because he's a money mark. But that's besides the point.
Oh, my God. All right. There is one thing I want to kind of address here with this match. It's my final call on this match. I am slightly surprised, even though it would have been very difficult to do this on regular television and give it away for free, that The Rock is not involved in the Elimination Chamber. And the reason I say that, obviously, is you and I have both discussed the possibility of a tag team match for night one being Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes versus The Rock and Roman. It would have been that much more interesting to include Rock in the match for the World Heavyweight Championship against Seth Rollins. I don't hate the fact that he's not in this match, but obviously you can kind of make your comments here to that theory, but I'm just a little bit surprised they didn't try to go that avenue.
I wouldn't have been against it.
Me either.
No, because then that would take care of the problem that we were talking about earlier with Rollins, where it would be like he's kind of like the fourth wheel in this whole thing. He would be in a position where he would be main eventing against one of the biggest stars in wrestling history.
Right.
He would get a 10 times better payday than he would have gotten against CM Punk. And on top of that, the only problem is that would he be doing the job? And
yeah, it's true.
I think too, Rock would want to work with him because Rock is in his early 50s. He's got to be able to be against somebody that's going to be able to carry the load. And who better than Seth Rollins to carry a match like that?
Absolutely. Yep. Even, just regarding the fact of our commentary previously about a potential tag team matchup,
it could still happen.
You're 100% right. And that's true, too. It could still happen
because Lashley is the sixth participant who is in the midst of a problem with Karrion Kross and the AOP. And so if Bobby Lashley becomes incapacitated, there is a sixth man that is needed. He jumps in, wins the fucking thing.
I mean, unless they did what they did 2 years ago. Unless they did what they did 2 years ago, and he just like sits in the thing and just doesn't do anything.
I mean, yeah. I mean, he could do that, but him winning the chamber and even if he beats Seth Rollins, I wouldn't hate it.
I wouldn't either.
I really wouldn't hate it because it's just like, why not? And it's also been proven with Roman's track record that if he wanted to defend the title just at the major pay-per-views, he could do it and get away with it. So, I would not hate it. I would not hate the idea of it. And him being a champion again, I wouldn't hate it. It was just him facing Roman that I had the problem with.
I agree.
But him going up against Seth Rollins, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
So the whole thing, just real quick to put a little bow on that one, is the fact that it sets it up for SummerSlam or next year, right? Where and we all kind of have talked about this before. We've talked about it with Mark and stuff like that, where it will tie it in a bow. You'll package this up, and then there's that talk about potentially having, a rubber match, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with Roman. Maybe it is with The Rock, because The Rock will be World Heavyweight Champion. Cody will be WWE, maybe Undisputed Championship. Who knows? We have no idea what they'll do with the naming convention at that point. And, then they'll have that match, whether it be The Rock and him, or, Roman takes the belt off him and they unify the titles, essentially, is what we're trying to say. Then who knows? But I think there's a lot of storylines. You talked about AOP and Karrion Kross. You talked about the Cody and Randy Orton thing. We talked about Drew kind of being on the cusp of that. We talked about the biggest heel in this match effectively is Logan Paul. It's an interesting match. I'm really excited for this one. I think I'm more excited for this one than I was the last two, I would say.
I agree.
Yeah, it's got a lot of great potential, I would say. But kind of move the show along a little bit, in still order of importance, I would say, is the Women's World Championship. Ironically enough, I would say that is the next important match, because it will define kind of where the Women's Elimination Chamber match will go. So we have Rhea Ripley, World Champion, Women's World Champion, versus Nia Jax and the Annihilator. I'm really looking forward to this match, honestly. It sounds funny to me to say that out loud, but obviously there's only so many matches on this card in the first place. Especially, this is the only singles match. It's funny because, like, they've gone back and forth the last couple of weeks, right? Where it's like, you think that Nia has the one up and Rhea gets her back, and vice versa the next week, and then just kind of continues to go back and forth. Then you have Becky Lynch kind of involving herself in that a little bit and helping Rhea Ripley, and then kind of having that face off one week. I think there's potential here, and especially, being in Australia where Rhea Ripley is actually from, for those that don't know that, now you know. I just feel there's a lot of potential for this match to be more than what it is at face value. I really would be surprised if Rhea Ripley did not walk out as champion, regardless of Nia Jax's promos and all that stuff, and the face-off with Bayley of like, she's not gonna make it to WrestleMania. Yeah, she is, bitch. But how are you feeling about this match, Dan? Like, any thoughts? Anything you think is gonna go weird? Like, what do you think?
Nia Jax has improved immensely since she's come back.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
She has been fantastic, not only in ring, but also as a character.
I love that Michael Cole is, like, terrified of her, by the way. Speaking of character.
Love it. Like, look, you know what? The thing about it is that people a couple years ago, they shit on her, which I also think the majority of the problem with Nia Jax, and it's very unfortunate, but half of the fact, too, is because of the fact of body shaming a little bit. She's fat, or some people would consider her fat or something of that nature. But, or they would just, automatically, they would just put her in some doghouse of that perspective.
Right.
But the fact is that I've always liked Nia from the perspective of, you need someone that is able to kind of be a force that some babyface or underdog is going to have to conquer at some point. And that's what they've kind of set up with the whole Becky thing, which Becky's going to get her payoff on the road to Becky. If the road goes the way I think it's going to, Becky's going to get her payoff in the end before certain events. Rhea's in her hometown, so they want to make her as strong as humanly possible. She's going to get one of the biggest babyface reactions in the history of the industry, considering it's going to be in 60-something thousand countrymen in her home country.
Not Grayson Waller?
Not Grayson Waller. not Grayson Waller. But yeah, it's Nia is going to be able to be the heel that she absolutely can be at her best at in a great environment where they're automatically going to hate her right off the top, and she's just going to give them every more reason to hate her. But this is going to be, I think, one of the better matchups as far as Rhea's title reign is concerned, because Rhea has never been put in a position in any of the matches during her championship reign where I have sat there and I have said, wow, Rhea Ripley is in trouble and is going to lose the title. It has not happened one time. And I've said it, we've talked about it with like Queen Zelina or Zelina Vega, and then Zoe Stark and some of the others that have challenged her, where I've just been like, no way, no chance.
Yeah, even that fatal five-way, like I said last week, you knew she was still going to walk out women's world heavyweight champion, whatever it is, right. But you just knew. I agree.
And she is one of the top stars, not only in the men's division, but also in general. Like, you can put her on the side of the goddamn bus if you wanted to. And, she's become one of the most recognizable stars on the planet. And I see her retaining without question. Like, it's going to be her retaining and going into WrestleMania. The question is that how is she going to do it, and how dominant is she going to look at certain points? How strong is she going to look in this matchup where it's just going to be like, wow.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is leading up to WrestleMania, she's got to look strong anyways, right? So yes. I don't disagree that it's one of those questions of she's probably going to look strong, but it's how strong is she going to look?
Yeah, and I think that's... There's not really much more to add, because I think...
I think it's self-explanatory, right? I agree.
It's self-explanatory, the whole thing.
All right.
But I think that, it's going to be good.
All right. So with that being said, obviously this is a very important match in terms of the Women's World Heavyweight Championship, so we'll just lead right into the Women's Elimination Chamber now. So from left to right on the screen, you have Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, Naomi, Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair, and Tiffany Stratton. So I want to touch on this real quick before we even get started about how we feel this match. There was some speculation that it was going to be Jade in this match. And obviously, without knowing who then would have been dropped from this match, it's kind of hard to say. I would have maybe expected Raquel Rodriguez would have not made this match otherwise.
Probably.
And it's not about talent, it's about medical issues. Right. So for those that are kind of unaware of that, this is where the journalism aspect walks in, I guess. Raquel Rodriguez has been dealing with allergic reactions on her skin for quite a number of months at this point. For those that have checked out her social media, and for those that haven't, you should. Supposedly it's been an allergic reaction, I guess, to like mold and I think something else from what I gathered on her social media. Listen, all things considered, sucks for Jade that she's not in this match, sucks for potential storylines regarding that. Jade was on SmackDown this week, still has not signed an official contract with SmackDown or with Raw, quote unquote official, I guess I'll say, kayfabe. But Braun Breaker did, so I'll talk real quick about that. Braun Breaker is now signed with SmackDown. We'll hopefully see him more often on Fridays. I look forward to that. Jade, I would have imagined would end up on SmackDown as well, just because of the fact that it sets up a good feud with her and Bianca Belair, which seems to indicate where they want to go, honestly.
Right.
So, nobody really knows what happened there. whether Jade's still not ready, but they decided to give it to our returning Raquel Rodriguez as like a, hey, you know, like, good on you for getting better and stuff. She looked great in the Battle Royal to get this last spot. In saying that, she was good in the last Elimination Chamber as well, so kind of have to see where that entire storyline goes. I was a little surprised they gave it to Tiffany Stratton so quickly. I'm huge on Tiffany Stratton. Dan knows that. I think she is a phenomenal talent. I think she's definitely got a very strong and lengthy career ahead of her. In terms of who I think is going to win this match, we actually talked about it briefly last week, and I said that there are only really two possibilities in my eyes. So, Dan, I'm willing to bet that after the conversation we had last week, you're probably in agreement. It's either going to be Becky or it's going to be Liv. But your thoughts on this match?
100%. 100%. I'm 99% sure it's going to be Becky. I'll go to 99 percentile, but that 1% I will go to Liv Morgan on that. The only reason I say that Becky is in that position is because of the fact that they're pushing it so hard. Like, they're making it obvious without making it obvious.
I agree.
But they know that I think everybody this is what we expect. This is kind of the main event that I think on the women's side, that everybody kind of figured that this is the position that they're going to go in. So, I'm not surprised by it. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure the match will be great.
Oh,
and I'll be really interested to see who performs well. I think you got Tiffany in there, so I think she should have a decent amount to shine.
Yep.
Have her mix it up with Naomi a little bit, kind of Naomi shock elimination, against Tiffany or something, just to kind of get Tiffany in a good position and showcase her skills, because this is really going to be her breakout night of everybody. Oh, let's see her.
How dare you? How dare you?
What?
She had that breakout match for the NXT Women's Championship against Becky. Even though she didn't win, that was a phenomenal match.
But look, and I'm not knocking.
I know you're not.
I'm not knocking NXT, but this is going to be in front of a
rate
worldwide audience.
Yep.
And the fact too that she's going to be in front of 60,000 people. And I'm not knocking.
I know you're not. I know
she did in NXT, but you're talking about a different audience, because the hardcore wrestling fans watch NXT, where the casual wrestling fan, they catch NXT on the regular.
But this was a PLE. That's why I mentioned it. But right. I don't disagree with what you're saying. Just real quick, talking about Tiffany Stratton is, I agree that she needs a quote unquote shock elimination in this, but with her stature, truthfully, I feel like pitting her against Bianca or Raquel would really also get her over, because let's be realistic here. Tiffany Stratton maybe does not look it, but she is a powerhouse too. Right. And especially those that have watched some of those matches of hers in NXT. She was NXT Women's Champion at one point as well. Having those type of face-offs are going to be really important to get her over, because I don't think anybody that actually looks at her, especially that casual fan that you mentioned, sees her as the powerhouse that she really is, right? So if she can go up against a Bianca, up against a Raquel, and look strong and be strong, that's going to be a huge pop for her.
I agree 100%. I agree.
Dan's like, I'm already done with this match.
It's hard to. It's kind of hard to really kind of. Because I think we both can agree that we really expect Becky to win this.
Yeah, and if it's not Becky, it's Liv. Like, I feel like at this point, this is why I let off with that, because I think having the third option for me is going to be Bianca, right? Because they've had their run-ins in the past, and they're both similar stature, her and Rhea Ripley, in terms of the athleticism, the strength, and everything else. That wouldn't be a bad match either, but we've kind of talked about this the last couple of weeks, where it's like Becky's kind of in the, I don't want to say twilight of her career, but let's be real, it kind of is. She has not re-signed yet. Liv makes sense in the sense of, okay, well, I've been out of commission, so to speak, for X amount of months because of you, really.
Right.
And then the third option is going to be Bianca. Listen, like, I'm big on Tiffany Stratton. I already said it, but there's no way she's winning this match, in my opinion. Naomi just got back, so I feel like and correct me if I'm wrong, but she fought Alba Fire, and it was supposed to be Shotzi. So Shotzi was not medically cleared to fight in that match, so it was Alba Fire, and I'm pretty sure that's maybe why she got this match. And maybe just the notoriety of coming back from TNA, excuse me. And then Raquel Rodriguez literally is just coming back from her skin condition, so it's kind of the same situation of, I just got back from quote-unquote injury, I'll say it that way.
Right.
Obviously, an unrelated issue, so to speak, though, so I don't feel that she's... And I'm big on Raquel, too, but I don't think she's main event ready. I just... Not for WrestleMania, right? Not to say that whoever wins this match is getting a main event spot, but you know what I'm getting at.
Right.
So I have to agree. It's Becky at 1, Liv at 2, and then like a distant third is going to be Bianca. So I don't know what else we have to say here. I think you pretty much agree.
It's a lot more predictable than the men's matchup. The men's matchup
it is.
There's four definite candidates.
Right.
Where this match, I feel like there's only 1.5, maybe 2.
Yeah, and that's how they've presented it, right?
Yeah.
Especially at the press conference. Like, the fact that everybody felt this way about Becky winning this match, even prior to qualifying for this match, everybody thought it was Becky. And then there's that distant Liv Morgan and even further distant Bianca Belair. And it's not a knock against the other talent in this match. It's not even a knock against Liv and Bianca. It's just that's how it seems like they have been presenting this since before anybody even qualified for this match. It's just Becky comes out and talks about this every week, and you just know, like, okay, when they do stuff like that, pretty safe bet.
Yep.
Unless you got anything else, we can move on to the least important match of the evening.
Yeah, I got nothing else on this, but I think it'll be. I
think it'll be good.
I think it'll be good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll definitely enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the least important match of the evening, I apologize to the Judgment Day in advance, is for the World Disputed, whatever the hell, Undisputed Tag Team Championships. I don't even want this match to happen. Damian Priest and Finn Balor are the champions against Tyler Bate and Pete Butch Dune.
Peter Dune.
Peter Butch.
This is all Peter Dune's fault.
He's Butch. I don't know what else to say. Listen, they've had these qualifying matches for the World Tag Team Champions, Undisputed Tag Team Champions. Like, I don't even know what to call them at this point, because I feel like it's going to end very soon, as we kind of talked about a little bit last week. And as much as I like the team of Tyler Bate and Peter Dune, I do not care about this match. Judgment Day has really not made any impressionable title defense of these tag team titles, aside from, the same team of Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes, which even then was not anything spectacular. I feel like the Judgment Day is going to win this match. I don't really want them to. I'm going to say it that way, just because there's the tag titles lately, despite having these great tag team matches, have just kind of fallen to the wayside. They don't really seem to have any kind of direction for them. I hope that having the Judgment Day lose them will change that a little bit, but I'm not even overly confident of that either. Just go ahead. I don't know what to say anyways.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, go.
For cutting you off. No, it's just it's the Judgment Day has been, especially Finn and Damian Priest has been holding on to that Money in the Bank briefcase now for it seems like fucking 3 years.
Well, I mean, compared to Theory, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the problem is that he's almost made it irrelevant because he barely mentions it. I feel like sometimes he's had it, and he's been this tag team champion in this reign that has done nothing. Him and Finn have been playing third and fourth wheel to Rhea and fucking Dominic Mysterio in this group.
Yeah.
And I don't even think about JD McDonough. And the best stuff that they were doing was with R-Truth. And
they dropped that way too fast.
No, because this is what I think is going to happen. So I think that they retain, and it's going to be R-Truth and The Miz. They're going to
be Awesome Truth at WrestleMania.
Be Awesome Truth against Judgment Day at WrestleMania.
All right.
The tag titles. That's what I think is going to happen. And everybody's going to be interested in the tag team title match again because people are just going to be like, because they want to see R-Truth win. So, I feel like we're going to get a decent payoff with this whole Judgment Day thing. Some people could be like, well, they ended the angle too soon. I think there'll be a decent payoff in the end.
I want to clarify. I don't think they ended it too soon per se, especially if that is the angle that they end up doing for WrestleMania. But dude, I'm sorry, but R-Truth is a national treasure.
He really is,
and he just kind of killed it. But if the payoff is a WrestleMania match with Judgment Day, Finn Balor, and Damian Priest versus Awesome Truth, The Miz, and R-Truth for the World Tag Team Championships, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
I would be okay with that. And it's funny because I feel like people just don't even know how old R-Truth is sometimes. Dude. He's what, 52, I think?
Something like that.
Yeah.
He's just insane.
Dude does not. I don't think he's aged in 10 years.
He hasn't. He looks the same as he did in 2001.
Yep.
When he was K-Quick. I'm like, wow, this guy's great.
Man, yeah.
He hasn't aged in 20-something years. He's hilarious. He's been that way now for 15 years, where it's just every time he's on television, he's hilarious.
He is. It cracks me up every time. And we talked about the DX part last week with Johnny Gargano and Ciampa, and how funny that was, and how they shouldn't have been no, nah, dude, you should have been yeah,
just embrace it. Shut up.
Exactly.
Just come out as a new DX.
Who knows if they would have still gotten over? I think we said that last week too. But that. And this past Monday, when Dominic is calling for the chair, R-Truth grabs it, but then sits down on the chair and shit. It's just, the stuff he does is just so simple yet so funny.
Yes.
And that's what makes it hilarious. And it was the same years ago, obviously at this point, but still very funny is the segment with Brock Lesnar before the Royal Rumble. I'm going to throw you over the top, Paul Heyman.
Like, you're in the match.
Yeah, and the whole thing was just to make Brock laugh, and just doing stuff like that is really what makes wrestling just so fun at times. Like, you have guys that can just make you laugh and can do stuff like this, but also it's just an entertainment value between the whole thing. But any other, not that I imagine there will be, but any other thoughts about the tag team title match?
No.
All right. So we'll move into our second segment now. So again, it was President's Day this past week on Monday. So we're going to do a little bit of a special segment, quote unquote, with our, or at least some, Mount Rushmores of wrestling. I know it says WWE on the little ticker tape at the top, but it's wrestling. It's fine. It's fine. So we got a couple potential wrestlers here at the bottom. We got an empty Mount Rushmore. So we could do this any number of ways. I think the best way, when I say any number of ways, truthfully, it's like we could do a total Mount Rushmore throughout the years. We could even do one for like the 80s, the 90s, 2000s. I don't want to get too nitty-gritty with that. And we'd be here literally all night.
I could do one by decade. I could do one by
exactly.
companies.
I don't want to do that, because if we did by companies, we literally would be here all night.
We'd be here all fucking night.
Yeah, I mean, we could do like a top 4.
Let's talk about world-class championship wrestling. You'd be like, go fuck yourself.
Oh my God. I'd be like, I'm going to bed. I'll just leave it on record. You can just keep talking, Dan. So I feel like we can do like maybe a top 4, obviously, because that's what Mount Rushmore is. Top 4 presidents. This would be top 4 wrestling talents. And I feel like that's a good way to kind of start this, and then we can kind of talk about other ones that maybe would fit in certain niches, whether it be decade, whether it be a 5-year period, whether it be companies, and kind of have it be something like that, because like I said, if we just do strictly decades and companies and top 4s and all of that, we would literally be here probably forever. So I included a bunch of guys that I feel like would be on a lot of people's Mount Rushmore. So I just want to kind of go through some of them. I'm not going to name, who I feel yet. But from left to right, we have the Macho Man Randy Savage, who was part of the Mega Powers with Hulk Hogan, who was also here, but I'll get to him in a minute. And Macho Man, to me, is always like one of those guys that is really on the cusp of that conversation. I know there's people out there and fans out there that can be like, what do you mean he's on the cusp? It's just, certain things I didn't like, I didn't agree with, part of the character, and that is what it is. But Macho Man is always kind of like in that conversation, always on the cusp, was in the NWO, was Macho King. He was in the Spider-Man movie, for Christ's sake, the very first one. Yep, exactly. So how can you not include the Macho Man, at least in the conversation, whether he makes anybody's Mount Rushmore? That's open to interpretation. The next guy going to the right is the quote-unquote great one, the Brahma Bull, The Rock. We talked about this last week, and I feel like it's been a conversation for a number of years between Dan and I, where and Steve Austin is here as well in this picture, so it's almost like poetic justice here that a lot of these guys are like in the same picture. But without Austin, is there a Rock? Does he get over? Does he kind of play it safe like I thought last week with the Nation? And, obviously we'll never know, but thankfully so we'll never know, because literally those feuds were just phenomenal. I know we talked about last week when he was at Backlash that year after WrestleMania and just taking the camera and panning, and then there's Steve Austin with a double middle finger. It was just, I love that match. Just for that reason alone, I love that match. But, The Rock, he went to Hollywood, he came back, he was a phenomenal, quote-unquote, Hollywood Rock heel, and it just, chef's kiss. Like, Rock is a phenomenal and a generational talent, and the fact that he's back in WWE is just really, really interesting television. And then moving on to the person he fought at X8 is Hulk Hogan. Granted, it was more Hollywood Hogan at X8, but still, Hulk Hogan has had a phenomenal career stemming all the way back to 1984, the start of WrestleMania, the start of Hulkamania especially. And when he went to WCW, I believe it was late 93, if I'm not mistaken, or early 93, having those first kind of matches, having those pay-per-views. Mid-94, okay.
Yeah.
For some reason I thought it was 83, okay. Or 93, excuse me. When Dan actually had me on Pro Wrestling World Talks, Spotify, Apple TV, etc. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll get your shameless plug out for you. When he had me on last year, we talked. It was a Halloween episode, so we talked about great Halloween Havoc matches. And another person on this slide, ironically enough, they all are like interchangeable. We talked about the cage match with Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. Great match, great chemistry, a lot going on. And I remember the cage was practically breaking because they couldn't remember how to bring it down or something, man. Like, that thing was like all lopsided. And then transitioning to Hollywood Hulk Hogan and the NWO. Hulk Hogan has had a storied career. I feel like if he is not on anyone's Mount Rushmore of professional wrestlers, you are just probably younger than 30 or something.
Or Bret Hart.
Yep. Who ironically is here as well. And then moving on more so to the right. I don't know how I'm going to do those last three, looking at the slide now, but Stone Cold Steve Austin. I feel like between him and Hulk Hogan, there are not any 1A, 1B, or number 1, number 2 wrestlers in the entire history of professional wrestling than these two, Hulk Hogan and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And it's funny because a lot of people, ironically, whether they remember or not, or just are forgetful, whichever, are not really remembering that Steve Austin left and was fired from WCW, where Hulk Hogan was already at that time. And it was in part because he just did not want to do jobs or anything else and be second fiddle to Hulk Hogan. And there are other reasons for that, obviously, but that, according to Steve Austin, is a pretty big reason as to why he left. He felt that he did not want to be in the shadow of others that were of an older generation, so to speak. He went to ECW. He went then obviously to WWE. WWE, a lot of people tend to forget he debuted as the ringmaster with the $1 million belt before transitioning into Stone Cold Steve Austin, which I always laugh at the story of how they figured out that name, but I'm not going to get into that just yet. Next, I guess we'll continue with the old school wrestling the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Again, this is another guy that if he's not on your Mount Rushmore, you are probably younger than 30. I don't have any other way to say it. I already mentioned him with his match at Halloween Havoc versus Hulk Hogan. If you miss any of those matches, you are doing yourself a disservice as a wrestling fan. I'm just going to say that now. I already said that him and Austin, Hulk Hogan and Austin would have been 1A, 1B. If we're going to talk about number ones, Ric Flair is easily 1A, 1B, or 1C. Easily. He was a phenomenal talent, great on the mic, and his career spans decades. If I'm not mistaken, he was about 57 when he won the World Tag Team Championships in WWE with Dave Bautista, who is now Drax. As Dan is looking up, trying to remember if my information is accurate.
He was 54, I think.
I thought he was 57.
No, I think he was 57 when he won the IC belt.
Okay. Maybe you're right then. I could have sworn he was 57 when he won the Tag Team Championships. Obviously, I've got a picture of him in younger days when he was WCW World Heavyweight Champion. But, still. So going up now, the next guy I have is Bret Hart. The best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. Fuck you, Bill Goldberg. Bret Hart is one of those guys that truthfully had a career that was taken a little bit short because of other people's miscommunications, we'll say. And I think we talked briefly about it last week. Watch out for the kick. And then there it was. Bret Hart is a lineal talent. His matches against guys like Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels, who I did not get a picture of, ironically enough, were just phenomenal matches. Not including the Montreal Screwjob, by the way. Just clarifying that now. We love you, Bret. At least I do. Anyway, Bret Hart is just one of those guys that literally had just one of those great careers. And Dana mentioned it, if not last week, the week before, about the promos that Bret had later in his career in WCW that were just so hilarious, so funny, and just you wouldn't have expected.
Who are you to doubt El Dandy?
Who are you to doubt El Dandy? Oh my God, so great. And Bret would go on to be, I believe he was a member of NWO. And
he was leader at one point, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Obviously, the Hart Foundation in WWE, WWF, whatever you want to call it back then, and had a lot of great feuds, a lot of great matches, and again, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. And finally, again, going up, because that's how this apparently wrapped itself up, to kind of give space for Zoom to record us, but the Phenom, The Undertaker. I would say that if I was going to have a favorite wrestler, and, I will preface with after Steve Austin, because I was a huge Stone Cold fan back in the day, it is going to be The Undertaker. I actually remember working at a church as one of my first jobs and doing the sign of the benediction, which was the symbol of The Undertaker at the time, and them being like, "Are you okay? Is there anything wrong?" And I was just like, yeah, I'm just a big wrestling fan. The history of The Undertaker is that of a storied career. The Undertaker had a career spanning pretty much 3 decades. And for those that remember it, the streak was huge. And you could make the argument now that he was 20-something and 1, not 20-something and 2.
Redacted.
Yep, redacted. I wasn't going to say his name, but yes. I'm going to call it Redacted B, or Redacted 2, whichever we want to clarify that as.
Redacted.
It is not the redacted we talked about.
Redacted.
So hold on. So are we gonna go with like Redact Beasts or Redacties? I don't know.
The Beast Redacted.
The Beast Redacted. Okay, I like that.
The next big Redacted.
The next big Redacted. UFC Redacted.
UFC Redacted.
Yeah, UFC Redacted. I think works actually. I think that clarifies that enough. You can make that argument. The Undertaker had so many great feuds, so many great talents across, I don't want to say so many great years, but it really was. Like I said, if I was going to be a fan of anybody other than Steve Austin back then, it was The Undertaker. And I always loved those feuds because they were just so great. I loved the Undertaker and Kane feud. We talked about that a little bit last week when we talked about Kane, but it was just great. And even as much as I really didn't like it at the time, I even thought the AJ Styles feud at that WrestleMania was good too. He's putting over talent regardless of whether he wins or loses. He's putting over guys that make sense. You could, say what you want about the American Badass and Limp Bizkit, but I still enjoyed it. And the one thing that I enjoyed the most about The Undertaker, ironically enough, is Teddy Long. The Undertaker!
The Undertaker!
Yep. But I've talked enough. I will kind of give it up to you, Dan, and kind of go through however many you want, your whole Mount Rushmore, guy at a time, whatever you want to do here, and kind of go through who is, in your opinion, on these Mount Rushmores.
Well, you want to do a guy at a time, I guess?
That's fine, whatever you want to do.
That's probably, I think, the most fair, I think, observation. And also, if this person is on your Mount Rushmore, also if we have like shared ones,
I'm willing to bet we do. So that's why I'm saying like it doesn't matter how we go through this because sure
we're probably going to be talking about some same people here, maybe one or two that are on the list.
At the very least, yeah.
Yes. So it's kind of I guess I'll start with you were just mentioning The Undertaker, so I guess I'll start with that. Only because is that Taker was kind of one of the first superstars that I think I was kind of drawn to as a child when I first got into this in late 90, early 91. And Taker was one of them. And what so I was watching the Royal Rumble at my uncle's house. And I remember this verbatim. Taker comes out, Brother Love's out there, and my uncle just goes, "All right." And then it's just like, "I gotta go get a beer." I distinctly remember that. Like, him saying that. And that was back in 1991. But I just remember him popping for The Undertaker coming out and then going and grabbing a beer. Like, that was instinctual, I guess, for him. But knowing my uncle, that makes a lot of sense. It's so funny that for most of my adult life so far, he was still at least appearing at WrestleMania every year. He did kind of have like that Santa Claus schedule for like the last decade, but he had earned that right, in my opinion, because of the fact that in the leanest times of the company's history, which was the mid 90s, and then moments, and there were three people that kept that company going in the mid 90s when they were really in bad shape, when Hogan had left and Macho Man had left. And that was The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, and Bret Hart. In the mid to late 2000s, when the company was under duress for certain things that occurred, the three people that kind of kept that company afloat was John Cena, Shawn Michaels, and The Undertaker. So both those guys really kind of, at least Shawn and Taker at least, really kind of kept that company afloat during some really lean years. And Taker was always loyal. And he always kept to that character. And he always protected that character like nobody else has or since or probably ever will. It's so funny to me seeing that he has like a podcast now and a YouTube page. It's like, what the fuck?
Well, just the fact that he's active on social media, period.
Yeah, because it's just like this guy was the last of that generation, that last of the dying breed of just like, because if I ever saw him in public, it would have probably been like, because that's Mystique was still there. And
yeah, he kept the kayfabe alive for sure.
So long, man. But so great at the same time, because it's just, my respect for him just continued to grow and grow and grow. And he's still one of those guys that I think he left at the absolute point that he should have left a few years earlier, probably, but that's not here for me to make that call. Do I wish that there was a couple of them that he kind of could have taken back? Absolutely. Goldberg especially. But I think it was good at least for him to go out on his own terms. It was really hard to see him in that Roman match at Mania. Oh.
Taker, you mean? Yeah.
That was like seeing like your dog at the end of their life when you know what the only option is. And that was kind of like how I felt into that match going into it, and how it ended. It was one of the few times in the wrestling industry that I bawled like a baby. And I'll be when he took his gloves off, left his jacket and his hat in there. That, because I knew instinctually what that meant. But I also knew going into that match, I had kind of accepted it and realized what was happening. And there were certain moments, and that was the type of love and respect that I always had for that character. And the love and respect I've had for Mark Calloway as a human being for being able to pull that character off. Because he is on that list and in this monument to me only because of the fact that he never really left that spot for me. He was always there. He was there in 90-91, even before kind of everything started. Like I went as The Undertaker more times for Halloween than any other time ever. Because number one, it was the cheapest Halloween costume I could possibly get.
Yeah.
Well, I remember in 92, right? I was Abraham Lincoln that year for like a school thing, and my mom made the jacket. So I was like, all right, well, the jacket's already made. I took a Freddy Krueger hat from a costume that my brother or I had used a year or two before. And then my dad had gray work gloves, and then he had a gray tie, and that was my costume. Like, that was it. I was The Undertaker. And literally, I think it cost me no dollars. So my parents loved it. And I found an urn. It was like a wicker urn with like some herbs in it. No weed, unfortunately. But again, I was dying. But it was just like, so I had an urn and everything. I think there's pictures around somewhere, but
I was gonna say, man, like this has to go on our social medias or something.
yeah, I know.
Man.
It does. If I can find them at some point, I will. But I went as Taker so many times because I always liked the black kind of London fog jackets. I've always been a fan of those. And so I always had one of those, at least readily available. I would either just have to buy a hat and see if I had a tie around. And then later on, when he didn't have the tie and the glove getup, it was easy because I could just be like, oh, I'll just put on a black shirt and I'll be fine. And then he was champion. I could just have a belt, you know. But I mean, he's one of the few guys that, like, within the first moments of getting into the industry that I was like, oh, this guy's awesome, even though he was a heel. Like, you remember they used to show the little kids back then in the crowd. They used to be scared shitless. Yeah. Like, you just see the look on their faces. They just used to be scared to death of this guy. Where I was just like, no, I was the complete opposite. Plus, you know, I kind of figured out that, you know, that this guy's not going to come out and, like, get us. Like, I don't think he's like some child abductor or anything like that. His job is to bury souls that are in the wrestling industry, not little children. So that was also the first Hasbro figure that I really, really wanted. I still remember I found it at the toy store that I was at. And I went up to my mom and I'm just like, I need this now. And she's just like, you already got it for Christmas. You're already getting it for Christmas. And that was also the moment that I realized there was no Santa, because you're just like, oh shit, they paid for it. I get it now.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the dots that already suddenly came to connection. Because you put it on your list, right? You're making this list and you're just like Undertaker Hasbro, and somehow it's like, oh, okay, I see how this works now. But no, it's always been that. He's always been that to me, of just the importance of a character and as a performer. I think it's neck and neck between him and Hulk Hogan of the most action figures that I own. And everybody gets mad because they're always just like, they do so many Takers already. And I'm just like, do more. You didn't do this one yet. I remember getting of course I had to get the ultimate figure of him and the Gobbledygooker. This is the absolute, I said, this is the absolute best figure set you could possibly get, because it's the best ever and then it's the worst ever all in one set.
Yep.
Like, it's fantastic. But yeah, and I already know he's going to be on your list, so like I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know, you talk about it's funny because, like, you stole everything I was going to say anyways, so that's why I'm just like, all right, whatever. He is on mine. He's just one of those characters that I kind of fell in love with, especially in the time period that I started watching it. Like, you know, 95, sure, but more so 96, 97, 98, the time when I was in junior high. And I loved the ministry story at first. I hated it when it became the corporate ministry, obviously, but he's always been that consistent character for WWE that was just always there, always relevant, always in the storylines. And it's funny because I do remember the time, like I said earlier, where they had the brand splits finally in the early 2000s, and Teddy Long just every SmackDown, The Undertaker, and just the way he said it, and used The Undertaker as this, like, deterrent from people messing around with, Teddy Long was the general manager, so having him kind of as this enforcer type, it was always cracking me up because I'm like, wow, the Undertaker just became this, like, I don't want to say bitch, but kind of like this bitch for Teddy Long. But it worked, and it was an effective deterrent at the time to have this character who, despite being an American badass at that point, just really kind of sold who and what could really be done. And I remember in the, especially mid to late 90s, when the character, which was not mutually exclusive to Mark Calloway, it was a lot of characters, just had started to kind of become stale. And when we kind of look at the reasoning behind that, a lot of them didn't have great storylines. A lot of them didn't have storylines that adapted to these kind of newer characters or existing characters, or realistically, if you can't get what I'm trying to say, any character. And that was always the big thing. It was like, okay, where is the story going next? We kind of talked about that last week with Kane, where, they kind of took the character and did what they did with it, and it was a little too early into the character for that. But with The Undertaker, they always kind of righted the ship. And Mark Calloway was just very, aware of these things, was always on television pretty much, even as the American Badass, even when he came back as, the dead man, so to speak. He was always there. He was always consistent for them. But he also was a leader in the locker room, let's be real, where a lot of guys looked up to him. He was kind of like this arbiter in the back where, you hear about guys and hear about, locker room court, so to speak, or wrestler's court, where he would be the judge of that. Everybody kind of looked up to him, whether that be existing talent, new talent, and talent that obviously came later. That's where this kind of stemmed. And, he was a guy that really did not flex very often either. He just didn't. We have talked about this earlier, right? And obviously talking about Mount Rushmore in the first place, we have a lot of guys that flexed their creative control, brother. That was not Mark Calloway. He didn't do that. You told him that do the job, he did the job. And, I think you had mentioned it last week, if I remember correctly, where we're talking about Steve Austin winning at 14, and how there is a potential that a good chunk of why Shawn Michaels may have done that job was because The Undertaker is sitting in the back. This is not kayfabe. This is a true story. Undertaker, Mark Calloway, is sitting in the back with taped fists just in case Shawn Michaels didn't want to do the job. And another story to that is that apparently Shawn Michaels found it incredibly disrespectful that Mike Tyson covered his face with the t-shirt and wanted to start a fight. And another story is that Undertaker was there along with Shane McMahon to kind of be like, if you go attack him in this press conference, I will fucking destroy you. And stuff like that, to me, just adds to this entirety of why, regardless of your feelings for the man, for the character, for the title defenses, anything, is why. And listen, like, I know I'm jumping around. There's so many stories out there about Mark Calloway, what he has done for the industry, what he has kind of done as just a human being in the locker room to not only be this guy outside in the ring every week, but just in terms of being a human being, right? that Mark Calloway is so deserving, regardless of any of those things, to be on anyone's Mount Rushmore. But the fact that he played this character, regardless of, quote unquote, changes to the character for pretty much 30 plus years is just huge. And nobody, in my opinion, really had that same level of commitment. You could make the argument that Hogan did. You could make the argument that Flair did because they were in the game as long as they were. But Undertaker was doing it for a period of just kind of going this way, right? Point A to point B. Hogan's was broken up. Flair's was broken up. You can make the argument that a lot of these guys, Rock is on this slide too, where he left and he came back, and he did it again just very recently, where he's gone for a long time, but just recently came back as well. Undertaker was there. Undertaker is like Old Faithful, where he's there, he's always there, and honestly, he's probably going to be there Saturday in some capacity. The One Dead Man show is going to be playing in Australia, and obviously Elimination Chamber is in Australia, so you can kind of put two and two together to say he's probably going to be there as well, in some way, shape, or form. It's just, again, in my eyes, Undertaker has been there, he knows the business, he's played the business, he's done very well with the business. No one, in my opinion, is just more deserving, but who you got for your number two, my guy?
Well, I want to do a comment to The Undertaker. I'm glad that he hated that American flag lining that he had in his coat that they did for Survivor Series 93 when he joined up with Lex Luger. I'm glad he hated that angle just as much as I did when I was 10. I recently found that out on some of his podcasts. That story got out. He's just like, I wanted to kill Vince for that. He's like, I'm never doing that again. So I think he lost the coat at certain points. He was just like, oh, I don't have it.
Yeah.
Because he just knew.
You know what's funny? Neither of us kind of mentioned this, and I just want to touch on it real quick. You talked about Hogan just now, too, which is funny. You're a dead man, Ramsey.
Remember when he dragged Hogan on his bike?
I do. I loved that moment probably more than a lot of people did, but, whatever.
I'm just sitting there laughing at the whole thing. I'm like, you just see him backstage. Just get it. It's like, for one thing, I'm like, Hogan's doing this? What, is he nuts? Like, he can break a hip doing this.
I mean, listen, it was kind of payback because he could have broke Undertaker's bike that other time, too, when he tried to start it and drive it up the ramp. Too.
Oh, yeah, and he couldn't.
Before he abandoned it, yeah.
Well, actually, I think he ended up destroying his bike like a week or two earlier. He hit it with like a semi-truck, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that, yeah.
So, there was some bike damage. He's just dragging him around. Oh, man. That Taker, big evil heel Taker in 2002 is fantastic. Like, just another level of just being. It's like, if no one wants to boo you, Undertaker, I'm going to find a way. All right.
I mean, listen, like, at the end of the day, like, I remember, I think it was around that same time when you talk about Big Evil, where pretty sure it was like Invasion, no? And like having Steve Austin have that segment where it's just like they're about to invasion. Kane, Jericho.
He's just sitting there not to try to crack up.
Oh, dude, he like, definitely almost cracked like about 3 times in that entire segment, at the very least 3.
Will you shut up?
Yeah, exactly.
I think for my number 2, it's a good segue because Austin, very short window as far as top star, but left like one of the biggest impacts in the history of the industry. and it still bothers me that we didn't get kind of like even a tenth of what we probably should have had injuries not been a problem. Because good Lord, the stuff that we ended up getting in like considerably in like 97, 98, 99, part of 2000, 2001, only part of 2002, and like a little short sprinkle in 2003. And that was pretty much over. So it was like you're looking at a period of maybe Roman's title reign currently, the length that it's on is almost like the combined years and time that we had with Steve Austin in the main event scene, championship scene.
Yep.
Which is scary to think about and extremely incredibly sad, considering the fact that for fucking 15 years I had to deal with Cena's ass. And we only got like a couple of years of Austin. It's just like, is there any justice in the world? Like, what the fuck just happened? But Austin, there's really not much else I can say except the fact of is that there was so many goddamn moments you just watch Monday Night Raw and you're just like, what the fuck is he gonna do next? It was like he was like Wile E. Coyote half the time. He went to Acme. Like, I need a Zamboni for this one. Oh fuck! All right.
I need a Zamboni. I need a beer truck. I need a concrete truck. I need a Mack truck. Like, you're right, though. I
need a limousine I need a monster truck limousine.
Yeah.
What? Trust me. I need a monster truck limousine. All right, fine. Fucking. All right. Shit.
Yeah, I have to say that, like, I don't know that I would have put him at number 2. It's not a contest, I suppose, aside from who the top 4 are, really. But realistically, I think at that point in time, there was probably no bigger of an Austin fan than I was. And it was the start of this was like 6th, 7th, 8th grade for me, if you think about it. I think I was in 8th grade when he won the title for the first time. And it always cracks me up to kind of think about Steve Austin in that sense because of all the feuds that he had at that point. Last week we talked about it when he had the feud with Shawn Michaels to actually win the belt. And everything that came out of that in terms of his feud with Vince McMahon. Redacted, excuse me. I can't forget. And how great that actually ended up being, and how that character of fighting your boss, very blue collar, literally just could not have come at a better time. It just couldn't have. Because at that point, I'm pretty sure that at that point, Steve Austin is doing what everybody would have wanted to do and just beat the crap out of their boss. It's just, it always blows my mind how simple of a concept it really was. But I don't think that goes over without the character of Redacted. I just don't. And it's ironic to kind of think about it that way, but it is very true. And, others came into this too and be part of the storyline, like Undertaker, like Kane, like both in a triple threat match where they both pin him, like The Rock, and all those feuds that kind of came from that. And others as well, obviously, that were along those roads. There's Mankind / Dude Love / Cactus Jack. Triple H has been a part of those feuds as well. They were also the 2-man power trip at one point. And what you said about the simple fact that we'll never know what we missed out on just for the simple fact that his career was cut short through injuries. And it's so unfortunate. It really is. And let's be real, like, part of that is due to himself, where the final kind of straw for him, I guess, for lack of a better term, is the fact that he did not want to face Brock Lesnar in a throwaway match. And he was right. He was. You know, that 100% I agree with him. Where it's a throwaway match on television as a qualifier for King of the Ring that year, and he was like, no build up, no feud, why? And that was his basis of leaving, and I don't blame him. He was 100% right. I feel like we missed a lot of great feuds, a lot of great television because of that, but that's not on him. The injuries were catching up on him anyways, and, you know, I don't know how much he really had left in the tank at that point, and maybe rightfully so, considering his first match in 19 years was 2 years ago at that point.
Right.
So it's tough, but I really feel that the same with Mark Calloway, The Undertaker. If there was somebody you're going to put on a Mount Rushmore of wrestling, it's going to be Steve Austin. You know, what he did for the business at that time period, it definitely earned reviews. We talked about this a little bit last week with AEW, where Tony Khan is hiring all these different guys to try to get more viewership, and you're not adding views that way.
Right.
The feud between Redacted and Stone Cold Steve Austin, that was adding views, because everybody was talking about it. If you were even a remote, casual wrestling fan at that point, you were talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin. You just were.
He was on he's doing like Got Milk ads. That was a big thing back then.
Yep.
You know, they had him on TV guide covers. He was pretty much, had as big as an impact as like Hogan did, where Hogan was in the 80s going on Carson and doing the Jerry Lewis telethon. So many things that he was doing. I also wanted to go to help you out, but as far as the placement is concerned. So Taker and Austin, I wanted to push in the back, where 2 and 1. The Lincoln and Washington spot are going to be saved for like the last 2 that I select.
I don't think it really matters, but just the way it has been presented.
If we're doing, I didn't know if you were doing head placement. That's why I was asking.
No, I am not. It's more like who's on it, because I feel like if you're going to do a Mount Rushmore, it's kind of hard to rank them at that point.
Yes,
and it's very much the same with Steve Austin and The Undertaker. It's very hard to kind of put them as like a 1A, 1B, 1C, a 1, a 2, or 3. I think it's almost a disservice at that point. You could make the argument for number 1, and I'm sure you will do so very shortly here, but I feel like there's no wrong answer, truthfully. But
no, there isn't.
To your point, go ahead with your number 2, I guess, or your number 1 even, whichever it is.
So I was really coming into this tonight because I was thinking to myself, there was 3 of them that I knew automatically who I wanted. Now, the 4th one has been kind of a kind of whirlwind lately, just because I have been questioning my fandom of this person because of actions that he has decided to use on his own. But I really can't move him from this, just because the fact of that if I remember everything from a certain year, like, and stop it after a certain year, then it's good. Like I can't sit here and argue with that. So it's Ric Flair. Me not having him here would be a disservice to him and the years and everything that he's meant to me and my fandom. I question some of the things that he's done recently, but be that as it may, he belongs to be here just because he is, without question, one of the greatest to ever. If you're talking about like Babe Ruth, and you're talking about Michael Jordan. You're talking about all these guys in certain sports that they were meant to do this. They were the absolute peak as far as it goes, the top of the profession, the best ever. Ric Flair would be in that discussion as far as professional wrestling is concerned. Jordan, Babe Ruth, all those guys, Tom Brady, all wrapped into one. And the problem that I've had with him has been his actions as Richard Flair and not Ric Flair, where that is where I kind of have to leave stuff. It's the same thing that I feel about, that I'll talk about my last participant, my number one, later on. It's kind of the same deal, but it's where we're at. Like, I can't sit here and say that I agree with everything, but at the same time, me saying that he's not one of the best, me saying that he's not still one of my favorites, would be a great disservice, and me lying to people. Because I fully came into this tonight thinking I was going to put Bret Hart on this instead of Flair. That's where it was going. Because I've grown a new appreciation for Bret over the years. And it's grown. The more also he talks negatively about Goldberg, it also helps.
Yeah.
It just, every little thing he says about Goldberg, it's just like, yes, you get him, Bret. I'm not mad about it at all. I think it's just hilarious, but also fair. Flair, I can't, me saying anything other than the fact that he's one of the greatest ever is a lie. Because he is one of the best ever. Even if I disagree with certain things that have been going on with him. And it's not just because he signed with AEW, it's other shit. It's because the fact that he came out of retirement and went, it's my last match, and you get a $500,000 gate. People pay to watch this, and they almost watch you die in the middle of the ring. 5 marriages. You gotta fucking, you go through a major health crisis where literally you thought people, including myself at one point, was preparing for getting all the old DVDs dusted off and preparing for a weekend alone, crying your eyes out because one of your heroes died, watching old NWA matches from 1984. Because that's the type of mode that and then he gets out of it and then starts to continue to do the same things that got him into that position to begin with. Maybe it's because of the fact that every other fucking time that he's a front runner as far as a sports fan. One year he's rooting for the Rams, the next year he's rooting for the Panthers, the year after that he's rooting for the Patriots, the year after that he's rooting for the Jets. It's all over the fucking place. Maybe it's because of the fact that he owes everybody money. But again, this is Richard Flair. This is not Ric Flair, who, again, he's the best. I mean, for me to sit here and lie to people and be like, well, he's not one of the best ever, that's why I don't put him on my Rushmore. People would just look at me and be like, your bitterness and hatred for him is that blinding it. And it isn't. I can never hate Ric Flair. I can never be bitter at Ric Flair. I can be annoyed, which is something I've been for a while. But me sitting here and saying that he's not one of the best ever, not putting him on my Rushmore, would be lying to myself. And the last thing I want to do that is lie, especially to the audience, and just be like, well, Flair sucks.
Yeah, I again, without ranking them, Ric Flair, it's like if I'm gonna rank them, like I said, like those other two would definitely be, very close to number one. It's very difficult when you talk about Mount Rushmore to actually give them a ranking. Because again, like, you're narrowing it down, especially in this context of top 4 all time. But just, I want to keep it with Ric Flair for a little bit because he is also on mine. I could make the argument that he is number 1. I could make the argument he's number 3. I have a hard time putting him at number 2 because I know the other person that's going to be number 1. Like, let's be realistic. If you haven't said him at this point, he's going to be number 1. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm not going to say his name. I'll let you can have that. I don't give a shit. But Ric Flair is tough. And it's for all the reasons that you mentioned, right? It's this mushroom energy drink. It's this AEW shit. It's the fact that he wrestled probably a little bit too late into the twilight of his career and potentially past that. But Ric Flair in the 1980s and the early 1990s, in my opinion, is like 1B, if not 1A, depending, right? And for those that have not seen some of those matches that Ric Flair has been a part of, we talked about being a disservice to yourself. That is one of the things you were a disservice to yourself about. I mentioned one earlier in the show where it was Hulk Hogan and Halloween Havoc in a cage match, and that may not be the best match of either of their careers, but it is a phenomenal match nonetheless. It is a match that you get to see Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan. And those matches are out there, but let's be real, in the history of wrestling, they're few and far between. It is not The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, but it is very much akin to that gravity of that match, where you have 2 all-timers, especially back then, I'm going to say near the height of their careers, because neither looked great, but they didn't look awful by any stretch of the imagination. And I know Ric Flair is known for a lot of different things, whether it be this recent stint with AEW, whether it be for Woo! Whether it be for a mushroom energy drink, which I did not know was a thing until this all happened, just saying. Whether it be for some of the, like, old man flops, especially in WWE and around 2000. Whether it be as one of the oldest tag team champions in the history of the business, Ric Flair has had a phenomenal career. You mentioned Richard Flair, and I just want to mention the fact that his daughter Ashley, aka Charlotte Flair, is also a multi-time world champion. And no, Dan, I see the face. We are not going to talk about David Flair. We are not going to do that.
Why the fuck would I bring him up?
Because I saw the face and was like, oh, we're going to bring up David too.
I did the post earlier on Wrestling Glory Days. Find it on Facebook.
I know, and The Shoot and Diamond Podcasting Production reposted that.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I appreciate it.
Oh, no. We need to start doing that for sure. Let's get the notoriety where we can. But all in all, Ric Flair just had an absolutely phenomenal career. And I remember him just going and being the batshit crazy old guy in WCW in the later years. I remember him being part of the NWO. I remember him just elbowing the middle of the ring for God knows what reason, if there even was one. But a lot of people, unfortunately, remember Rick for stuff like that, and not the phenomenal talent that he actually was, especially in the 80s and the early 90s. And the one thing that I feel like WWE got wrong is pitting him against Macho Man at WrestleMania and not Hulk Hogan.
God.
It should have been Hulk Hogan. And they knew that. And they knew that.
The problem is that was during the time when the steroid scandal was just starting to kick up. And they were just like, well, Hogan needs to go away for a while. You know, I mean, that was just a real hard kind of time for that.
And I mean, listen, I don't hate Macho Man and Ric Flair on paper.
No, they did a great job of that.
They did, absolutely. But
she was
at that
mine
time,
before she was yours.
but at that time, it should have been Hogan. And I think they realized that after the fact. But hindsight being what it is, you know, again, Rick had a phenomenal career. No discounting that. As much as I don't like him in AEW, I understand the reasoning for it, to see Sting and be there for that final match. As much as I don't like it, I understand it. But, you know, mushroom energy drinks being what they are, which I will never find out what they are.
One of my favorite, one of my favorite stories when Flair was in WWF was they were shooting like a dressing room scene, and this is when he first came out with the pictures of him and Elizabeth.
Sure.
You notice there was on the back wall, they had a picture of Jane Fonda, and it was signed, and it said something along the lines of, "Dear Rick, just wanted to say thanks.
Yep.
Love, Jane." And of course, at the time, Jane Fonda was married to the owner of World Championship Wrestling, Ted Turner. Yep. So,
yep.
It's just little shit like that where it's just like, oh man, that's cold. That's some major shade thrown at you. And it's just little stuff you don't remember, like, noticing or... Flair, I didn't remember noticing it. Flair said it one time in a High Spots interview. He said, yeah, that was Redacted's idea.
Of course it was.
Like,
of course it was.
I love it.
Oh, man. Yeah. it's great because I feel like fans now don't understand not only how good wrestling was back then, but also in the context of this conversation, how cheesy it actually was, too.
It's so cheesy.
It was.
Like, that was the same era of fucking Papa Shango and Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, God.
Yeah. Just clarifying now, folks, that Ultimate Warrior will not be on anybody's
I'm surprised.
Rushmore. No, I'm not doing it.
I'm shocked he's not on your Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, dude, he's not. He's not on the slides. If I didn't put him on the slides, he's not there. Just saying.
During at Mania 6, you were jumping for joy when he beat Hogan.
Listen, we didn't know any better, you know. All right. Speaking of not knowing any better, I feel.
Oh, you prick!
Yeah, I had to. It was a perfect segue. I feel like, not to jump the gun, probably, but the Hulkster is probably on both of our Mount Rushmores. So, yep, and there he is. There he is. All right,
that doesn't work for me, brother.
Creative control, brother.
Creative control, brother.
All right, so I will let you kick off your reasoning, rationale, so to speak, whatever you want to call it, as to why Hulk Hogan is on your Mount Rushmore.
Well, it's an easy rationale when I can put it to layman's terms for people. In professional wrestling, the best heel and the best heel usually also doesn't make the best babyface. Like, Ric Flair is a fantastic heel, but as a babyface, there's something lacking. Steve Austin, great babyface. When he went back to being a heel, though, it didn't do well. Like, it actually hurt business with him being a heel because no one really wanted that. When Hulk Hogan came in 1984, mind you, I have to point out his AWA days where that kind of was the launching pad for what became Hulkamania. It's just the fact that Vern Gagne wasn't smart enough at the time. Not saying that he's dumb, but when you don't have Hulk Hogan under contract, you have it under a handshake agreement.
Nah, dude, you
And
can
then
say
you
he was dumb.
You
can say it.
Yeah.
I'll say it. He was
You
dumb.
don't have him under contract, and then you keep saying that he's going to be world champion, but then pulling the fucking rug out from under him and not realizing that Vince McMahon redacted, but it has to be put out there because this is before all this stuff happened. But the promoter at the time for WWF, redacted, he was pulling out all the stops. He wanted to go to a national level. And he saw Hulk Hogan as his ticket to do it, and it worked. The man headlined 7 consecutive, technically 8 consecutive WrestleManias. And then 9 walked away as champion anyways, even though he wasn't advertised. Because, creative control, brother. Sorry.
I'm not booked.
One of my favorite side characters in a documentary ever. Dennis Stamp is a fucking legend just for that.
I'm not booked.
I'm not booked. There's 2 of them. There's Dennis Stamp, and then there's Mike Graham. And Mike Graham, because of he smashed 6,000 guitars. Never drew a dime.
Yep.
Just remember, folks, Jeff Jarrett can only draw you 9 pennies. That's it. 9. So don't give him a dime. You got to stop short and only give him 9 pennies.
Yep.
But it worked. Hogan became this. He had a fucking goddamn Saturday morning cartoon show on CBS. He sold more action figures than probably He-Man at certain points.
Who ran?
Yeah, he's not going to get mad at that. He'd probably be like, well, you're probably right. He was in everybody's home. Like, either it was on TV, it was either a doll, it was either a fucking toothbrush, a towel, or something. The marketing machine had gotten behind him. He had his own pillow pal, for Christ's sake, But then he goes over to WCW, gets a huge pay raise, and they turn him heel. And you know what he does? He revolutionizes the fucking business again. This time as a heel. No one can sit there and say, in the history of the wrestling business, that they were the number 1 box office attraction as a babyface and a number 1 box office as a heel. No one can say that except Hulk Hogan. And he not only was a hero to me as a little kid, but when I turned into a teenager and you kind of have that rebellious side to you, and you kind of have that attitude of just like, fuck authority. The NWO was perfect. 13, 14 years old. Everybody looked at the NWO and was just like, holy shit. You're watching Monday Night Nitro every week, thinking to yourself, who's going to turn this week? It was like that every single week for months. Years. Should he have beaten Sting at Starrcade 97? That's neither here nor there. Fact is that he's he's the man. Like there's a reason that when I went down to Florida, I had to meet him. Because if it wasn't for him, there's a reason I had to thank the guy like 6,000 times. Because if it wasn't for him, none of this would exist. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now. We wouldn't be talking about it because he was the guy that got all of this to where it is now. Like, he laid all the groundwork down. And he did it twice. The industry was on its ass. He came in 84, revived it, made a lot of people money, including himself. They couldn't do much more with him. He goes south, gets paid a lot more money, this time for a major media conglomerate, making $1 million a month. And they're like, what are we gonna do to try to come up with something? And they just say, fuck it. They turn him heel. Revolutionizes the business again. That had fallen on its ass. And he now all of a sudden, because of one thing, just dropping a leg on Macho Man Randy Savage, and immediately became one of the most, one of my favorite PWI issues ever was the year-end awards in 1996. And Hogan had been like most popular wrestler of the year so many goddamn times, but he was voted the most hated wrestler of the year. And the picture of that year, the picture that they had of him accepting the award, he's kissing the award and he's holding all the ballots that say most hated wrestler of the year, Hulk Hogan. He's holding them in his hands and kissing the trophy. He was so proud of himself because everybody thought in 96 he was done. The fucking Dungeon of Doom angle, the goddamn Doomsday cage match, that was the lowest of the lows for a lot of people. That may have been the lowest of the lows for WCW. And within 4 months, he was literally the number one guy in the company, and he was a bad guy. And he saved his career. And he saved the fortunes of professional wrestling again. And some could have said, well, the Steve Austin thing happened a couple weeks before. That's true. The Austin 316 promo happened.
Save
a few
big
weeks
this week on Lidl deals.
Fish declaration of the
fillet,
NWO.
$6.99 per pound. Fresh strawberries, $1.99 per package. Bone and assorted pork chops, $1.99.
It still needed a kind of a spark to get the industry kind of revived again. And the NWO was that spark because everybody started watching after that. I remember that summer. Going into that summer, no one was talking about wrestling at school. After that summer, a good portion started talking. 2 years later, everybody was talking about it. Everybody was talking about it. It would literally happen overnight, where the industry was, no one gave a shit, and all of a sudden, you come back from one summer, and everybody on the fucking planet's talking about it. And, it was an interesting time. It was so interesting because you thought you were the only person on the planet at one point just even talking about wrestling. In 95, I almost got out. It was so bad. Like, you're talking about shit that just didn't make any fucking sense. It's like they Hulk Hogan and is fighting the Giant on the top of Cobo Hall in a monster truck match. And then the Giant, after being thrown off a fucking building into water, comes out and challenges Hulk Hogan at Halloween Havoc 95. And he's supposed to fall in water, yet he was 100% dry coming back into that matchup. And you're just sitting there and you're like, and that was the same night the Yeti debuted. Why did the title change hands? Oh, because he could lose the title by countout. Since fucking when? Countout disqualification. It's like, since fucking when? Oh, because Jimmy Hart put a stipulation in because he was actually a rogue agent. Fuck this. Why do I keep watching? And then, you got Diesel versus British Bulldog for the WWF Championship in WWF. It's like, why am I still watching this? But then a year later, it's like the greatest thing ever. And it's because of Hogan. It's like, you can't sit and say that he didn't make an impact on the industry. Oh, he had 4 moves. Like the leg drop's bullshit. It fucking worked. He didn't need to do a shooting star press. It would have been hilarious if he fucking did. Like, could you imagine Hogan doing, oh shit?
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you imagine that? Like, it was one thing to imagine Brock doing it back then, but
It'd be so
Hogan?
hilarious.
Like, holy shit.
It just would be the most hilarious thing ever. I mean, if you've seen his Japan work, I've thrown him I've seen him hit an enziguri. Like, he has an STF. He does like a cross arm breaker. He could fucking work. He just didn't need to do it in the States because he was working 320 dates a year because of the schedule back then. It's like, yeah, I'm going to do fucking high work rate matches when I'm going to be in fucking Tulsa, Oklahoma tomorrow, and I'm in California tonight.
But it's so funny you say that because it's the truth. Like, a lot of people don't realize, like, the schedule back then was, like, think like Cody Rhodes now, where he's wrestling over 100 matches a year. That was the norm back then.
Times that by 3 back then.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot more house shows back then there are now.
Well, I tell people all the time, like, Hogan, because Roman's had like 20-something, or it's like 25, 30 title defenses in the last 3.5 years for his title reign. Hogan probably had that within the first 2 to 3 months of his title reign in 84 and 89. Like, he's having to work. He's doing house shows, like, especially the expansion part back then. He was going all over the fucking place. One night he's in, they were going into uncharted territory. He said the story of him in Puerto Rico. He said this in one of his DVDs. He's like, going down to Puerto Rico and having a fucking gun stuck in my mouth because I'm not supposed to be in that territory. And I talked to a guy who did work in Puerto Rico and the territories down there. And he says, that's not really an embellishment. That has happened. It's so that's one of those things I could sit there with him and I could say, okay, that's real. Like, you didn't embellish that at all. Does he embellish things? Yes. But I've also noticed in the wrestling business, there's guys that embellish shit all the time. It's a business of, I got a bigger fish than you did. I got a better car than you did. I got a better Rolex than you. I got a better suit than you. That was just Ric Flair. Like, Hogan is, I think it's between Hogan and Brock on who made the most. Oh, I'm sorry, Redacted. Hogan and Redacted, who have
Redacted
made the most. Yes, Redacted B, Redacted A,
Redacted UFC. Yeah,
yeah. Redacted B. Him and Hogan probably made the most money. Hogan was making probably $1 million a month from WCW back then. I heard his payoff at WrestleMania 1 was like $1 million. I heard his payoff at WrestleMania 5 was like $5 million. So he is, without question, the biggest box office attraction ever in the history of the industry. A hero to many people, including yours truly. And he'll go down as the best. It's, at least in my opinion. And Mac and I have gone back and forth on it because Mac is like me. You know, there are moments with Hogan where it's like, all right, I understand why he didn't want to lose to this guy. Like, I understood why he didn't want to lose to Warrior. Get that. He thought Warrior was going to be dog shit. And he was right. I disagreed with him not losing to Bret Hart because he should have. He should have lost to Bret. He should have put Bret over clean. He should have set Bret in a direction for the future to lead the company into the next decade and a half, instead of having to drop it to Yokozuna. Because it's like, I got to lose to a guy that's bigger than me, because no one under 6'3" should lose to me, or I shouldn't lose to anybody under 6'3". That was his mentality. And I understand it. I understand what the business was back then, where it was like, you didn't want to lose your spot. You didn't want to lose to somebody that you feel is inferior to you. Not saying that Bret Hart was inferior at the time, but that's the way he thought. Bret Hart was always playing second fiddle to Hulk Hogan, and it's unfortunate because I still remember in 1994, Bret Hart is the WWF champion, and he just had one of the best feuds ever with his brother Owen. He put on killer match after killer match after killer match. Hulk Hogan goes back to WCW, comes back to wrestling, goes to WCW, wrestles, I think, maybe 3 or 4 matches the entire year of 1994, and he gets named Wrestler of the Year by Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Instead of Bret Hart, who performed all year for WWF, won the Royal Rumble, won the title at WrestleMania, had great title defenses against Owen Hart, and including the 1-2-3 Kid on fucking Raw. That's still one of the best matches in that show's history. And he lost to Hulk Hogan, who may have wrestled 4 matches in 1994. It's like, I understand why Bret has this case against fuck you, you piece of shit. Because it's like every time he thought he was going to get past him. 93, it's like, I'm finally going to get past him. WrestleMania. That doesn't work for me, brother. Fuck. 94. Okay, it's just me now. No one else can take this from me. Yoink. He wrestled 4 fucking matches. It literally is grimy in Homer Simpson. Bret Hart is grimy. He's just Grimes the whole time. He's just, I outwork you. Oh, it's just like, I'm eating lobster tonight. Bret's so pissed off. Fuck. Why?
That's literally like the best analogy you could have made.
It's perfect.
It is.
It is. He's Grimes the whole time. He's trying to get Bret, he's trying to get Redacted's approval. And all he just gets shit on because it's just this one guy who's a complete buffoon, but is just has half the work rate that you do. Literally. Yet he's the guy that's getting the Employee Months of the War. But he didn't even fucking do anything.
Well, I mean, dude, like Hulk Hogan's not going to do a freaking Iron Man match anytime soon. At that point, especially.
Not Brad. He's not going to have a cage match like you and your brother, like at SummerSlam 94, right? That's one of the best matches I've ever seen in a cage match. The biggest high spot that Hogan ever had in a cage match was he superplexed Big Boss Man off the top of the cage. which is actually a pretty spectacular sight if you look at it. Like,
I was going to say you suplex Sherry in the Halloween Havoc match.
That was funny. Oh God! Like as a kid, Sherry just scared the shit out of me. But you look at Sherry now as an adult, you're just like, yeah, I get it now. I understand why. But
It's like, what was I thinking?
it's like, wow, what the hell was I thinking? Because she was great. Like everything that she had a way of being able to enhance, I think, talent. I actually think she's going to be the next. She's going to be in 2K24. I thought as a manager, I saw. So that'll be good. Like people could actually start using her as a manager now. That'll be fun. But yeah, Bret Hart. He's already got his 94 speech written for Wrestler of the Year. The issue comes out. Are you fucking serious? Did I get Popular Wrestler of the Year? No, that went to Sting. Fuck you!
Oh my God. I don't even know.
He's so mad. He's like, fuck. 94 is supposed to be Bret Hart's year, right? And it's just like Hogan comes back, wins the fucking belts. This asshole again. Damn it. So the big question is, the drum roll we have to go with, Mac, is Hulk Hogan on your list? Does he make your Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, he does.
Of course, yay.
I mean, listen, like...
I always knew you were a Hulkamaniac, brother. I always knew.
What the fuck?
You believe. You believe, brother.
No.
Yes, you did. Yes.
I'm going to go yak after this. I feel fucking dirty right now. What a rush! Sorry, I had to throw that in there for that. That was like perfect. Listen, I've had this conversation with you at least a few times across multiple shows. Ironically enough, one of them was Pro Wrestling World Talk. I'm pretty sure the other one was a show that we can't say out loud anymore. No. For a variety of reasons, apparently, which I'm sorry. So I remember
support my local police. Let's just say that, right?
Yeah, listen. I don't live in that state anymore, but I also support my local police.
I'm just saying, hey guys, no issues here. No issues for me.
I bleed blue, baby. This one is tough for me, but I do have to go with Hogan because at the end of the day, without Hogan, especially I believe it was January 23rd, 1984, when he pinned Iron Sheik for the World Wrestling Entertainment, WWF, whatever title. Nobody fucking remembers. It really was the launch of WrestleMania. And the launch, as I said earlier, of also Hulkamania. And without these things happening, I don't think wrestling has that golden era boom that it did. And I said that the last time we talked about this. I said that on Pro Wrestling World Talk when I was on last year. And I said it on that other show that is the case. My biggest gripe with Hulk Hogan growing up was the fact that it's very much like Roman Reigns now. I'm sick of seeing him every WrestleMania main event. That was the biggest issue that I really had back then. Not really growing up as a wrestling fan or in a family of wrestling fans. It's a little bit different for me to be as jaded as I was about it, because, Dan, you grew up with this way more than I did at that point. There are other fans that same thing, grew up with it way more at that point than I did, especially in that era, that time period, if you will, where he is just like this bigger than life personality, bigger than life talent. And, again, like, wrestling was very different back then. But another thing that we talked about on that episode of Pro Wrestling World Talk, which was back around Halloween, is that he was like Hercules that year when they dressed up as different characters. And I'm just like, oh man, like, just kill me now. Like, the best part of that, obviously, wasn't even that, but it was just how freaking outlandish Roddy Piper was that year with the Halloween episode, and how he was like trying to trick these kids and all that other stuff in that episode too. He had Piper's Pit that episode as well. And I'm not trying to distract from Hulk Hogan, obviously, but Hulk had like these great feuds in that era. One of them being Roddy Piper. WrestleMania 1, it's a tag team match with him and Mr. T against Cowboy Bob Orton and Roddy Piper. And playing that forward to now, we talked about this earlier, where potential main event of maybe night one is going to be potentially, we'll say it that way because they're still not set in stone, The Rock and Roman Reigns against Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. And how that has been paid forward, if you think about it, by, going back in time and having a tag team match to close out night one, especially, which they did last year. They did it last year. It was a little bit, I don't want to say low stakes, but maybe low priority with the Usos and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens for the undisputed tag team titles. And, you mentioned it, Dan, with how they've kind of gone from all these different events, whether it be WrestleMania or Starrcade or other matches or matchups even, where you have so many different people that play a role into those matches. But the fact that you really still have not been able to top some of the main events that Hulk Hogan has had, even now, 20, 30, almost, Hulkamania, 40 years later, it's fairly telling. And yeah, you start this with the Iron Sheik, but he's had so many matches over the years with so many great talents, both in WWE and WCW, that you tend to forget about some of them, right? Like, yeah, the finger poke of doom, all things considered, like, we can sit there and be like, oh god, that was awful, but it fucking put butts in the seat. And as much as
I didn't hate the finger poke of doom.
Yeah, say what you want.
I didn't.
I know, but still, I definitely didn't care for it.
I laughed my ass off, but
it was funny. But looking at it from the perspective of that, and him and The Rock, him and Goldberg, him and Shawn Michaels, and all these other matchups that he had throughout this long career that he had. Again, like, to look back at those matches and then look back at the start of this, the start of Hulkamania, WrestleMania era, all these different things, nobody would have imagined that he would have become as big of a star as he did. And and I know it's easy to say that. I know it's easy to think that versus especially what we ended up getting. But we got a lot of stuff out of this. We got him versus the Macho Man, him versus Big Boss Man, him versus Sergeant Slaughter, excuse me. I don't know why I was blanking on the name for a second. You know, all these matches that we ended up getting out of him and how impactful all of that was. And you said it yourself, and I think it was very telling that you said it, regardless that it's the truth or not. The fact that he was so over as a face and then so over as a heel and kind of gave further longevity to his career by doing that, it's so telling. Like there's no shot that I think some of these other guys on the slide, some of the other guys that we could think of outside the box would have been able to do like Hulk Hogan did it. And that's kind of where I'll just stop and kind of like absorb not only what you said, but what I said too. Because I don't know that a lot of these guys could do it. Like, we talked about Steve Austin earlier. He could not really cut it as a heel after he was a face. We've talked about, Triple H in the past off show where, he was good for what he was. He was a great heel. He was not really the best face, in my opinion.
Right.
Macho Man can kind of work in both. He was one of those generational talents, kind of like Hogan in the sense that he was great doing whatever the hell Macho Man did, which I say it that way for a reason. Let's be real. Ric Flair, great face, but even better heel. There are so many other guys that kind of fall in these niches of they're a great heel, they're a great face, but it's really one or the other, where Hulk Hogan could really just play both.
Right.
And, again, you mentioned that early, I would say 94 to 96 period where wrestling's kind of on the downturn. Both companies, WCW and WWE at the time, are looking for these, payoffs, I almost want to call them, where they need a new storyline, they need fresh faces, but WCW gambled on an aging Hulk Hogan, and it paid off. We talked about it a little bit last week where we were like, hey, this worked, this didn't, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, this worked for them. They took an aging Hulk Hogan, turned him heel, and yeah, it pissed a lot of people off, but the payoff and being now WCW/NWO and everything that came out of that, it's like history. It really is, because there's no way, shape, or form that they could have anticipated that payoff. I'm sure they did to a certain degree, sure. But the fact that they kept playing into it for, I would say, what is tantamount to about 83 weeks, ironically enough, it really did pay off for them. And if they kept it going, and we'll never know, and if Steve Austin is not WWE World Champion at that point, who's to say that it wouldn't have continued, truthfully. But I think we're pretty much, on the same page in terms of our Mount Rushmore. But is there anybody that you feel like it is close but just didn't end up on it?
Bret Hart was real close. Shawn Michaels could make an argument being real close. I'm trying to think. God. I have to be fair and put Cena on that.
Are you okay?
List.
Are you
Yeah,
okay?
I just yeah. Cena, Randy Savage, obviously too. Rock definitely deserves. I also Problem with Rock is that he just had such a short window. I mean, a really short window compared to like Austin and others. But yeah, and Triple H also can make that argument too. Yeah, he can be in that discussion.
I'm not. See, the thing is, like, I'm with you on Macho Man.
Yeah,
I was a big Macho King fan at that point, especially early '90s. The Rock, I kind of agree, had that short window where I'm not really sold. And it's weird to say that, honestly, but it is the truth. Like, I don't feel that he had as much of a window as a lot of other people that potentially could have been on this. Cena, man, as much as I hate to admit it, I have to agree with you. And trust me, I hate it.
you know how much money we spent trying to watch pay-per-views, hoping he would fucking lose.
Yes, I do.
That I think is a part of it, because it's like I'm like it has to be no, not over. But the problem is that he has to be such an exceptional human being with his Make-A-Wishes. He's given more Make-A-Wishes than any other celebrity ever. And it's not even close as far as numbers are concerned. Like, it's just not even compared to like first to second. He doesn't say no to kids, and to be in that, as far as responsibility as a role model, he's right up there. I can't think of anything that he's done that I'm like controversially as a human being that I've demeaned him as. Where, it's just he's just a good dude. Do I hate him as a character? Absolutely. Did I want to see him get his ass kicked so much? When Redacted kicked his ass at SummerSlam 2014, that was one of my favorite moments in the history of the wrestling business. Just seeing him get German suplex like 18 times. I was just like, I've been waiting for this moment for over 10 years. And, again, though, with things the way they have been going, they might take that away. That's going to get like incepted out of my mind. It's just like
no. I'm not incepting that out of my mind. No. That happened and it was glorious. You mentioned Sean. I have to agree with Sean. He's very close. It's funny, like, as you were talking, I was thinking of like tag teams and women, and I don't feel that we have a lot of time left to kind of talk about those, but it's difficult to rank the women because of the different eras they've kind of gone through. Mm-hmm. Where it's like you had like the biggest feud in like the late '90s for women was like Sable and Luna Vachon. And then you had Trish and Lita, which was a great feud, and then you have this weird like go between of like the Bella twins, and it's just ugh. And then
there was a 10-year period where it was just like,
that was awful. Yeah, absolutely. And then within the past, I'll say like 7 to 8 years, you have like the Four Horsewomen and others now that have kind of come into their own. So I feel like for those that are watching and listening, like, where's the women's? It's tougher, right? It's a lot tougher to kind of sit there and say, okay, well, here's who we think it is now, and a lot of it's like current talent, or current to the sense of still wrestling, so to speak. Not so much guys like Undertaker and Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin that have been around for a number of years and retired already. It's just kind of a lot harder to quantify that.
I can't go past this certain point, like with women. It's
exactly.
Like there's someone that's redacted that has a big legacy in that realm. So I could go like the earliest I can remember, at least, and somebody would be like, well, there were other. Look, I don't fucking remember Mildred Burke. Okay? Like, I don't. I'm not, I understand, I have a good understanding of this industry, the history of the business. I get all that, but I've never seen a Mildred Burke match. So don't kill me on there. Do I acknowledge her existence? Yes. But if I'm talking about my lifetime, the first one that I could think of was Wendy Richter. So I go back to like 85.
Exactly.
So the last almost like 40 years, it's like, but the problem is that you can make an argument that the four horsewomen could be on a Mount Rushmore.
By themselves,
like,
exactly.
All of them have the credentials to do that.
Yep.
So I could make it easy from that perspective, but at the same time, there's at least one that I'd take off that list. Ship her ass right out of town, put somebody else on there. But it is harder for the women. It is, because it's like some people are like, well, Trish Stratus isn't like the level that Charlotte Flair is. It's like, yeah, but Trish was good at the time. Victoria was really good too. So was Lita. I can't remember who else at that time though that was really, really good. Mickie James.
I was going to say Mickie. Yeah, absolutely.
No, Mickie could be in that discussion, of course, because she was great. And I think that we had an easy transition too when we lost Trish and Lita like in the same year, like within 6 months. Like they were both out. No, not even. Like within 3 months, they were both out of the company. So it was like we're able to get a transition from Lita and Trish over to Mickie, no problem. But it was still hard to try to build a complete division around it because they didn't take it seriously. And I'm not talking about the women. I'm just talking about the company in itself. You gave them no time. The belt was one of the belts was a joke. That Divas title? Oh, God. Whoever fucking made that should have been shot. Like, it was big butterfly in the middle of it. And I know that was the title that fucking Nikki Bella held for so long. But the Bella twins were nothing to fucking write home about as far as in-ring talent is concerned. They were not. Brie Bella did not learn anything from Bryan Danielson, and neither did fucking Nikki from John Cena. It's just not.
Oh man, yeah, they didn't, and it was unfortunate because a lot of people still, for God knows what reason, credit them with the advancement of the women's division, so to speak, or the revolution thereof, and it just wasn't them. It wasn't.
No,
it was those that were slightly after them, and AJ Mendez, AJ Lee gets some credit for this, and there were others too, like Paige, like the Four Horsewomen that came a little bit after them and came up through NXT that really drove that. You could make the argument that AJ Lee started it and they finished it, which, okay, but when you look at it from a different standpoint, again, and you more or less agreed, it's much harder to rank them based on this, and it feels weird to rank them so early, quote-unquote, into the careers, because they're still very active. All four of the horsewomen are still active. It's not like the guys we named for the male Mount Rushmore, so to speak, and we're not going to do the female right now, but it's because it's so different.
Right.
You could make the argument for, like I said before we even started the segment, really, like, you can make the argument for a decade. You can make the argument for even, like, a mid-card Mount Rushmore. You can make the argument for a tag team Mount Rushmore, and it's all interesting conversations, but the problem with doing it is, like, even if we did tag team for a second, right, you could make an argument that it's all going to be, like, 80s, 90s, 2000s guys, but on the flip side, is it, like, are the Usos on there? Probably. Like, are the Steiners on there? Probably. are LOD or, you know.
LOD and the Dudleys are locks.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's the thing.
In my opinion, those guys are locks.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. 1,000%.
And I know people would probably get pissed off at me for saying this. And I'm sure that the majority of them will probably groan at what I'm about to say. But the Young Bucks also deserve to be on that.
All right, show's canceled. Bye.
I'm just telling you.
Bye.
As far as
show's canceled.
Why?
Why?
Why are you saying this, Dan? Look, they were able to get their T-shirts and fucking Hot Topic when wrestling was still considered kind of uncool. And people knew who they were, and kind of they had this grassroots movement. Them and Kenny, same thing with, and Cody was a part of it too, with the Bullet Club and the Elite. So it's like, people just automatically just saying, "Oh, the Young Bucks aren't that great." Look, are they annoying? Kind of. Yes. But at the same time, I can't discredit them for what they've done as far as for tag teams is concerned. I love FTR too. Like, FTR belongs, I also think, is another one that belongs in the discussion. But, you know, for me, it would probably, if I'm doing tag teams, it would probably be LOD, the Dudleys, the Midnight Express, and then add a fourth team later. Like, I really couldn't name like a fourth team. The only reason I'd have the Midnight Express on there is because Jim Cornette will come to my house and beat the shit out of me. Motherfucker, what the hell? Leave me off the goddamn thing. What?
I mean, listen, like, there's so many great tag teams out there, regardless, right? Like, you could maybe make an argument for the Acclaimed. You could maybe make an argument for the New Age Outlaws back then. You could maybe make the argument for the Usos, 2 years ago, for example.
Oh, yeah. No, the Usos, definitely belong in that category.
Exactly, and that's the problem with tag teams. Is like, like I said earlier, you could even include the Steiner brothers. You could include just so many tag teams, and I feel like some of those that I just rattled off in conjunction with the ones you said aren't really wrong. Well, maybe the Young Bucks might be a little bit wrong. Sorry,
I didn't put them on my monument. I'm just saying they belong in this.
Fair enough.
I told you, I said 3 teams, add a fourth. Like, it's just, right. If I'm going by companies, if I'm doing company tag teams, the Steiners would be on the WCW. And that's the way you can break all that stuff down.
Right. Yeah.
It's just, it's hard to, if I'm going with my top 4, then you can do Mount Rushmores for days and days and days. Like, as a wrestling fan, you could be like, Mount Rushmore's by company, Mount Rushmore by decade, Mount Rushmore, and it's the same thing that they do with the NBA, the NFL, all that. You could go back and forth all you wanted by position.
No, Jordan's still better. Sorry.
Well, I know.
We're not playing that game.
I know.
All right. Yeah, I just, it's an interesting conversation, but the one thing I will kind of say here is that regardless of what our thoughts were, whether it be on Elimination Chamber winners, potential winners, or obviously our Mount Rushmore, we hope that everybody kind of goes into the comments, see what other people say. Obviously, pick your own Mount Rushmore, your own winners to our Elimination Chamber. I think it's a great conversation.
I want to hear what people have to say.
Yeah, me too.
Talk about their Mount Rushmore. Do you do by company? Because this is a kind of, it's a discussion I think everybody should kind of have, and it's an easy form where you can kind of go with of like, I have to pick 4 because this is Mount Rushmore.
Right.
So it's like it kind of gives it a directive. Yeah, it's not a top 5, but I felt like this week especially, I'm like, the timing of this will work.
Yeah.
Next year's episode, we'll do tag teams, piss everybody up.
It's a great conversation because you could do the top 4 all time, like kind of is what we did today, right? But you could also do top 4 per company. You could do top 4 per decade. You could do top 4 tag teams, top 4 women, and I don't think there's a wrong answer. Like I said earlier when we started this conversation, I don't think there's a wrong answer for anybody's Mount Rushmore. Excuse me. Whether it be any of those scenarios.
Top 4 Brutus Beefcake moments.
I stand corrected. There are wrong answers. There are wrong answers.
Top 4 worst Ed Leslie gimmicks. Let's see. You got the Booty Man. You got the Zodiac. You got the Disciple. You got the Butcher.
Actually, you know who I forgot for the tag teams, by the way, is the Acolytes.
Oh yeah, the Acolytes.
Or APA, whichever you want to call them. But
you said the Acclaimed. I was like, what is this fucking?
I don't think they're bad. It's just
I don't think they're bad either. I was just surprised because I'm like, FTR and people can say what they want about the Young Bucks, but you kind of gotta, if you're gonna say modern.
Buddy, I'll say whatever I want about the Young Bucks as soon as we get off the air. Don't worry. Because that's a can of worms that I am surprised you decided to open. Any final thoughts before we kind of sign off? Because I just noticed the time.
Yeah, I think we're no final thoughts tonight because I think we've kind of touched base on everything. Next week we're probably going to go very game heavy, I think.
Yep. So, again, we're recording this on Thursdays, so SmackDown is coming up. It's the go-home right before Elimination Chamber in Perth, which, for those that are unaware, if they forget, whatever, it is at 6 a.m. start in the East Coast, which makes it a 3 a.m. start on the West Coast. Pre-show is an hour before that. Plan accordingly, or just go on Peacock whenever the hell you wake up, because that's the only way I'm going to play this game.
That'll be us on Saturday, and then we'll probably be doing a wrap-up show on Saturday.
Yep, so that's a great segue. We are going to do a special episode of a Elimination Chamber recap. We have zero idea when we're going to record or release that. Probably record sometime Saturday and then probably release Sunday or Monday. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because otherwise I like I said when we started talking about it, we have zero desire or drive or anything to get up early to watch the Elimination Chamber. God bless Viking
We're not
Dios.
22 anymore, folks. Like,
dude, even if I was 40, oh wait, I am. I still am not getting up early to watch this. But yeah, since you have no final thoughts, I will hand it back to you, and you can sign us off this time.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us again this week and making this so successful. Please like and subscribe. Comment. We really want to hear what people's perspective is on their Mount Rushmores of wrestlers, and also any thoughts you may have for the upcoming big show coming up Saturday. Are you going to get up early? Are you going to brave it? Depending on where you are. Are you on the West Coast and decide, hey, you know what? I might as well just pull an all-nighter. This might be something perfect for somebody that's in college. You drank a little too much and you're just like, oh, what's to do? Oh, I guess I'll just watch Elimination Chamber. And then you'll hear from us this weekend talking about the show, the last big PLE before WrestleMania. So that road is really starting to ramp up. There's very few exits after this one. So time will tell. Who knows what's going to happen. On behalf of Mac, thank you again for listening and watching here on The Shoot, a part of Diamond Podcast Productions. And we will see you again real soon. Thanks for watching.
Bye.